Good morning and welcome to the Morning Connection. This is Thursday morning. It's becoming close to my favorite day of the week, not only because it's the start of our weekend, but also because we go live from the Ligony Club, where we are hosted most graciously by our Ligony Club family and JD's Urban Pub that makes sure we are well fed and watered for the morning. But we get to see the sunrise. We are outdoors. It's beautiful. It's green. The morning air is fresh. I cannot say enough about how beautiful it is today. So, good morning to those who have joined us online and to those who have joined us on air, making it a really fantastic morning. Morning, Pastor Percival. I know you are setting up to join me on camera and on the microphone, but I have to include you in my greeting. To those who are back in the studio, Mr. Engineer, good morning to you. Thank you for being on point, on spot, right on time. And the crew here at the club, good morning to you both. Thank you very much. I am always delighted to be doing the outdoor gig. All right, so this morning we have a very special guest who is going to join us, a daughter of the soil, a member of the Jamaican diaspora living in the United States of America, a master teacher. Some of you may know her name. She is Michelle Allison, and I am pleased to call her friend. She is the older sister of my very good friend Stacy Henry, who is also now a member of the diaspora. I'm still mourning and missing Stacy from Jamaica, but I'm very pleased to share with her sister this morning. Michelle is a principal in the United States, in Florida. She is a master teacher of no mean order, and I wanted to have some discussions with her concerning a bit of a compare and contrasting discussion, looking at how the policies for personal development and national development intersect in the hallways of the schools in America. Maybe there are some things she's doing there that could work very well here, and just to invite a commentary on some of the things that we are doing. So I'm looking forward to Michelle Allison joining us at 8 a.m. There are some special mentions that I want to handle early in the day. The first one is to our member of parliament and member of the opposition, Lisa Hanna, who has taken one for the team. That's what I'm calling it. She's gone almost viral, I think, on the internet. But the effect of what was characterized as a snub of Lady Kate has had an international impact. The effect of it has been to put front and center in the discussion Jamaica's desire to remove the Queen as head of state and the call for reparations. I know Lisa Hanna well enough to say without any provocation that she was not snubbing Lady Kate. I think it was just a turn of the head which caught the cameras, and someone had the instinct, I won't say foresight, I don't think they meant her well. Someone had the instinct to post it, and it has gone viral. But now we don't have to rely on Mark Golding to find a polite and respectful way to say his piece to the prince, because it has already been drawn on the front page. I mean, I've been getting articles from people all over the world asking me what's going on in Jamaica. Most accept that she meant no harm, but as I said, she took one for the team. So Lisa, thank you, because those are two big points people were protesting. Pastor Percival, you ready to weigh in on the conversation? How are you?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I woke up this morning
Yes.
with this song in my head.
So
By
you're not
Kevin
joining the
Downsell.
conversation. You're
No,
just
but
going
no,
into
no. But
All
no,
right.
the
Feel free.
conversation, the song is "You Make Me Stronger."
Yes.
Make me stronger in spite of all the different things that have happened. Yesterday we spoke about what has happened with slavery and the reparations and how our response should be. And then all of this happened in regards to, you remember, we got the two pictures with
Oh,
Yeah,
Lady Babsy
come on.
grasping her
As
firmly.
you rightly said yesterday in terms of mama, in
Mama
terms
Babsy,
come
grab
on,
the girl and
and
bring her
so
in.
if you are not sure, I will help you. And then of course we saw the thing where somehow they caught, like she was looking at her, and in that instant she
Yeah,
turned
she
her head,
turned her
and
head.
everybody has used it. Boy, what the thing with social media? You have no
Yes.
intention of anything, and it is taken to mean something else. But when you say take one for the team, what do you mean?
It means that you suffer something painful and horrible, but it works to the advantage of your team.
Right. So my
That's
song
what
which
it
said, "You
means.
make me stronger." Whatever happens
It will make her stronger, and the whole team
it
makes
makes
the
the
whole
team
team.
stronger in terms
Yes.
of the message. So
Yeah, yeah.
I work with that song, and if our it's Kevin Downswell, and he says all the things that have happened and coming out stronger as a direct result of all of those things. I'm not gonna allow it to push me back. You make me stronger. Oh, so
Yeah.
if our engineer could find that song for me personally, telling all of Jamaica whatever has happened, we are coming out stronger as a result of everything that has happened.
But not just Jamaica. If you think about it, what's been occupying our minds is drawing the attention of the current day and future leaders to the issues of the day. What's important? What
Yeah.
would bring harmony? What would bring better relations all around? So really, not just Jamaica will emerge from this stronger. A headline that says abhorrent. Prince William says slavery should never have happened. Now, I don't think when he was putting his boots on and leaving England,
You figured it
he
out.
figured he would be saying this. I mean, you know,
that it was abhorrent.
but he has come to Jamaica, and the issue has been so front and center.
Here,
He could not avoid addressing it, and in part, I'm sure that they too have been seeing how how the international press, how their home press has been reporting on the visit. The Jamaican paper, the headlines have featured the protests, the Rastafarian community. God bless them, because they have never put down the torch, even, whatever you may say about factions within factions. They have been
that has
consistent.
united them.
Yes, they've been consistent on that point. And so arriving on your, duty tour and seeing the diversity of views, but also the commonality of positions, he could not avoid addressing it. And Kimon Francis has taken, I think, poetic license to start her article by saying he was chastened. Not a word you often see being used in
But
reference
I think she
to
knows
royalty.
that. Isn't that great?
Yes,
So
she
she's a good journalist.
absolutely. That so I tip my hat. I'm wearing a hat today,
I know.
so I tip my hat to Lady Simone
It's a good hair day or a
Kimon.
bad hair day,
It's a fabulous hair day. You don't see it at the back.
I noticed.
Yeah,
My sister.
just trying something different. But she starts her article by saying, chastened by public protests against Britain's role in the transatlantic slave trade and centuries of colonial exploitation, Prince William expressed regret Wednesday night on the Jamaica leg of a Caribbean tour for the atrocities of the Black Holocaust.
So he is poetic, right? Black Holocaust.
Is that some new name? Slavery is now being called the Black Holocaust. Not sure I like it.
I don't know. I've noticed the switch that was the Jewish Holocaust, not
Yes.
the black, because I guess it's become front and center.
Are we associating ourselves with the word Holocaust because it had a lot more impact for the Jews than slavery? Talking about slavery has had for black people.
I'm getting a sense because that means it beyond slavery, because the implications of a Holocaust are widespread and continues even to this day. I think that's why they've chosen to use that word.
I think we're associating ourselves with the power of the Semitic tribe. That's
The
what I
right thing,
think.
if it moves the cause
If it
forward,
no, I hear you saying
if it moves the
yes, if it
cause
moves the cause forward,
forward, because
call
remember
it
the
what you will.
Jews,
But the reason I say it is that while the atrocities of the Holocaust are that atrocious, slavery, hundreds of years of chattel slavery, degrading. I'd have preferred to die quickly in a gas chamber. It's really why I said it.
okay,
I think you lose something when you make it seem like it was some kind of systematic act of war. You know what I'm saying? Just a thought I'm having. But as you say, if it moves the needle in the right direction.
because
But what is the right direction? I am prompted to ask you. What's the right direction?
right
Are we
direction
working
is to
towards a
move beyond
check?
remorse. Yeah, well,
Are we
it's
working
beyond.
towards reparations because Holocaust victims get
That's
reparations?
what I'm
Are
saying.
we moving towards reparations, which is money in hand, or are we moving towards a right understanding of what transpired and a true change in the position of the heart, which comes with consciously acknowledging the thing for what it was? That's just a question. What do you think?
I would say to all of those, all of the above. You know, you have
Yeah.
having a MC2, and you
All of
have
the above
and you
is
have
an option.
you could have 1 and 2,
Yes.
1 and 3, or 2 and 3, which, and I'm saying all
All
of
of
the
the
above
above.
in regards to it,
Yeah.
because you cannot begin to imagine what happened. I don't know if you have visited, like some people, um, the places where our ancestors were shipped from and what.
Yeah,
You,
man. I
have you
went to Badagra.
yeah, okay. So
I
you
stood at the point of no return. I stood in the little hovel,
Mhm.
the place where hundreds of slaves were packed and some died. I mean, it was like just, throwing. I don't think you even treat animals like that because you couldn't take the noise of the animals complaining about such abuse. But I went into the little room that was the holding quarters, and as they did the tour, they said when you stand here there's like a teeny tiny porthole. I say
I see.
porthole because of its size,
Or
but it's a
peephole.
little peephole. No, it's bigger than a peephole. It's meant to be a window, but you could see the shoreline and you could see the ship where they're saying, you could stand there and see the ship departing.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like your last view of your homeland.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but I
I've
see.
been to Badagra.
So
Where did you go?
I didn't.
Oh, so
I
which
didn't.
one were you referring?
I was just wondering if my cousin,
Yes. Oh,
who's
yes.
been in Africa,
Who went home?
who went home, she related it, and even as she was relating the simple fact of what happened, you could see the pain, because there's something that happens in the realm of the spirit. I don't think that we begin to understand or comprehend, but standing there brings back those memories. Like there's a connection in terms of of what happened, and so I can't even imagine. So as I'm saying, if anything moves the needle forward in terms of the need for reparation, but even beyond the need for reparation, the need for not remorse but repentance, um, in regards to what has happened, because the repentance brings to fore changing my direction, but beyond changing my direction, it's like the tax collector Jairus. He's not Jairus. The one that Jesus met.
Who, the centurion?
No, the one that was up in the tree. Zacchaeus.
Oh, Zacchaeus.
was up in the tree, and when he interacted with Jesus, what happened to him, it so transformed his life that he says, I will no longer do what I have done. That's one. But I'm going to make, we call it reparation. I'm going to restore. So if I should have
Yes.
taken one,
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
going to return back 4
Fourfold,
times,
right.
and a total
Yeah.
change. Because, Minette, the whole thing of what it does when you repent is the fact that it totally changes your actions. It really does. And then it brings forward the real change that are not only personal but institutional. That's what it does. Institutional. To say, okay, we're truly sorry. These are the things we change because we had a certain mindset, but we have changed our mindset and we're going to do what is right. So all of the things that would have come out of that will change. So it impacts societies in a significant way. So I'm saying if it moves the needle forward in terms of the actions that people have to do, let us move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so Miss Hannah took one for the team, and the prince has said slavery was abhorrent. Let me just close this segment by repeating what Professor Vereen Shepherd said. She said that the statement by the prince is nothing new and has not gone beyond what past British leaders have said. She's sure he got instructions. Please don't say apology. Don't use that word because you're going to commit the British state to reparation.
So what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
She's just echoing. So remorse is a nice thing. You get caught and you feel bad,
But to me, when you're truly remorseful, you don't have to be prompted to make reparation. Your own conscience does that work for you. Let's take our first break. It's now 6:30 a.m. This is the Morning Connection. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the Morning Connection, and thank you for staying with us. Percival and I are committed these hours of the day that we spend with you to give you the best of our thoughts or ideas on matters pertaining to building prosperity in the kingdom, and of course building prosperity for all Jamaicans irrespective of their ethnicity, their religious or political conventions or beliefs.
That's so true. When we speak about kingdom, when you have righteous leaders, there is laughter, there's enjoyment, there's prosperity. Not only for those who are a part of the kingdom, but for every single person.
Yes. Yeah.
That is why the philosophy of the kingdom is so engaging for me, because the philosophy of the kingdom comes out of the heart of God when he speaks about righteousness, which is doing things right, but justice. And the cry of everybody's heart, whether you are Rasta, Christian, Muslim, Nowherean, as somebody would say.
A Nowherean.
Nowherean. It speaks to the thing of justice. And because there's something in who you are as an individual, you know when justice is just flowing. When it's not there, everybody are growing. Every person is growing. And this thing of slavery has been an injustice and a blight on mankind. So yeah.
You know, yesterday, one of our callers, and I hope, we might not, depending on how the phone calls go today, but he raised an issue, and it was towards the end of the show, and we didn't get to spend much time on it, but I have a concern that it may have raised some confusion, and I want to address it this morning. The scripture which he quoted, I know the scripture, you might know the exact verse, but the scripture he quoted, it was Jesus saying, from the days of John the Baptist, the kingdom of God has suffered violence, and the violent take it by force. It is a much discussed scripture as to its meaning.
Christians must take up arms and try to overthrow the government, that is.
Well, the interpretation that was being hinted at is that the kingdom of God is the children of Israel as a nation, as a tribe, as a bloodline. And they are the ones who suffered violence, and they are the ones who were seized, taken. Violent men took them by force. And it is a rather literal interpretation of the scripture to describe the experience of black people, whom this caller has constantly said black people are the children of God, they are the Jews. And that slavery as an event in the lives of black people is representative of the violence to which the kingdom was subjected and the taking by force which occurred when we were captured and brought to places like Jamaica. A very literal interpretation. And I'm not saying at this moment that such poetic license cannot be taken with words of scripture. but I want it to be clear to those who are listening to us and who have heard us consistently say that we are kingdom minded people, that we are teaching the principles of the kingdom, and that the kingdom of God is a system of government.
That's correct.
Need I repeat that?
No.
It is a system of government. And what is most interesting about it is that all of the principles can be shown, the impact of those principles can be demonstrated in every area of government, in the administration of justice, in the distribution of wealth, in the treatment of land and the ownership of land, in the policies that undergird the management and utilization of land. You see it in commerce. I mean, there are detailed instructions concerning the behavior of merchants, of persons in contract. When you go back to the administration of justice, there are specific instructions on how evidence should be taken, on how witnesses are to behave. I mean, there are principles that occur in every sphere of life, of living.
How children must be treated.
Absolutely. How foreigners are to be treated within your borders. There is a principle that underpins every aspect of community living, of commerce, business, banking, even in terms of how interest is to be charged. You are not to charge interest when you are doing humanitarian lending. You're lending to a family member or to a friend who is in need and has hardship, and that's what you're responding to. You are not to charge interest. But interest is for commercial transactions where people are making profit.
Because even with the Shemitah year or with the year of Jubilee.
Jubilee, yes.
Returning the land. People don't even understand.
The idea of redemption. Redemption in mortgage transactions come out of those principles of the kingdom. That you can redeem your land. You have mortgaged it in order to raise money to do various things, but always you have the right to redeem your land at an appropriate point. Absolutely.
An appropriate way. It's when you really look at what is contained when you go through Leviticus and Deuteronomy, when they are outlining the principles of how people must live in community, even in terms of how you treated medical stuff.
Yes. Public health.
Yes.
The very pandemic absolutely, we were grappling with how decisions are to be made during the pandemic and so on and so forth. There are principles to be extrapolated from the kingdom of God, which addresses all of those things. Marital relations, I mean, sexual immorality or promiscuity or freedoms or whatever you want to call it. There are principles which touch and concern it, and these principles can be drawn from a study of the history of God's interaction with people all over the world, not just even the Israelites, because you see narrations in the Bible on treatment of other tribes who were not of the circumcision. Let's put it that way.
As we say, Jamaica people are walk wide, how you must deal with them. Even the concept of grace and redemption, you don't deserve it, but in the kingdom of God, those narratives of grace, undeserved favor and mercy and justice are just so upfront and sent in almost everything of human interaction.
I'm looking forward with great anticipation to the series that we will do on restorative justice.
Okay.
Because even the idea of restitution and restoration, those are all principles that are drawn from the kingdom. So, to cap it, I just wanted to make it clear that while some can be dramatic and literal in their interpretation of these words, please understand that for us, and as we teach and share and guide thinking, we are drawing principles from a system of government. And it is a system of government that runs as the foundation of all effective systems of government. I'm not saying all systems of government are effective. Some produce greater hardship on the citizens than others. But If you are practicing anything that looks like any kind of representational politics or democratic politics, whatever form it takes that involves bringing the heart of the people into the discussion on how
Consensus.
and trying to achieve consensus in how policies are made and implemented, then you are in the realm now of kingdom living. And it's very important that there is an understanding that it is a system of government. So it means every minister of government ought to be sufficiently informed and open to the awareness of these principles.
That's a very important point, because even as you deal with things like corruption
Yes.
and administration of justice, do not take a bribe that you are going to change the course of justice. Do not go into the court and tell a lie. And even in terms of convict, you must have two people must confirm what they say.
Right.
And people don't
Yeah.
understand where those things are coming
Yes.
from. And even, which raises a vexed question of capital punishment and the consideration of how that happened. Because in my readings, and I am saying I am not the end all of this information, you could not commit or kill somebody if there was not evidence that they had committed it, and it was without the shadow of a doubt.
Oh,
If there
hold
was
on.
any
Right.
question.
You have to be clear for me now. You're saying you could not carry out the execution of a death sentence unless you couldn't use circumstantial evidence.
No,
You had to have direct
it had to be
evidence.
clear,
Yes.
Of
course,
without any
because-
shadow of a doubt.
Because
Because
you can't say, oops.
yeah, after the person is dead. So even the concept of city of refuge
Yes.
that they set aside, they were cities of refuge. If something happened, you could run to it.
You could take refuge against the avenger of blood,
yes.
because it was understood. This is one of the principles. It was understood that the survivors of the deceased person had an entitlement to seek vengeance. Now, I do hear the cry for resumption of the execution of the death penalty. And every time I hear it, I am reminded of grace and why it is that with the new covenant that is manifest in the New Testament, why it is that societies have pulled away from executing persons on conviction in the court of law and after you've exhausted your appeals, because the original pattern, namely that there would be blood for blood, that there had to be some proportionality in the sentencing of offenders, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for a life. It is not about vengeance, it is about proportionality. You would not take more than is necessary to balance the books, so to speak. So now we begin to understand that with the death and resurrection of Christ, his death became the proxy or the stand-in for the punishment of all persons who we would be rightly entitled to execute them in return for their having taken life. If you are a part of that covenant and you are treating the death of Christ as the stand-in or the scapegoat, then rightly speaking, you should not be executing the sentence of death on any man. You should instead now be focusing on the rehabilitation of that individual, of bringing them to that point of experiencing remorse and repentance and so on. I think when we continue to cry for the death sentence, it is because we are refusing to participate in the restorative justice part of things, where atonement is made and the right relationship is brought into place between offenders and the rest of the society.
Okay, but there's just a but here. if
Whose
you are a
but?
part of if you're a part if you're a part of that new covenant, what
Yes.
if you choose not to be a part of it? Then how
Well,
do you
I
deal
think
with that?
that is why, but that is why we are continuing to hear persons saying, bring back the death penalty, because they're not ascribing to the covenant that, makes this kind of response
So that's
automatic for
interesting.
you. Yeah.
That's just a question that we just introduce because it needs to be um, come under consideration, because if I'm not a part of this and I'm not living this way, and that is how in terms of my human functioning, you have to ask that hard question: is there a need still for the death
The death
penalty
penalty.
in societies where people just seem to be off the hook and there seems to be no consequence for their actions? I'm just, I'm not saying I'm being devil's advocate. I'm not the
I know
devil.
you don't take any
The Lord.
employment from the devil.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just raising that for consideration, because the arguments will still continue and they'll say to you,
Yeah.
even with Sharia law,
Oh Lord, let me tell you, that one is
Sharia
is
law, which is practiced
yes,
in a
in
lot of
parts
Muslim
of Africa.
and in some countries,
Yeah.
yeah, and they say
Yeah.
we don't got the problems that those people have.
Because we rule with iron
Their fist,
fists.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, so it is.
Well, you come now to the section of how it is that you get society to elevate their thinking to a place where there is room for grace. Yeah, we need the grace for that. All right, so that takes care of the kingdom of God being seized by violence. Would you like to explain that scripture?
I'd like to explain the
Yeah,
scripture.
or should I attempt it?
You
Not
go
attempt it.
and I join.
And
Let
you'll
me just,
support me.
yeah,
All
let
right.
me just find it.
So,
Because a lot of the times I go into other
other translations of
translations.
the Bible. Okay.
Okay.
All right, you do that. So, John the Baptist, there it is. This now is, I guess, Bible scholarship. There was a period of silence between the last prophet. Who was the last prophet of the Old Testament? Malachi. But in point of time, because they're not really written in terms of, they're not the books are not written in chronological order. They're written based on the importance of the prophets.
Right.
So the prophets who did the most work will appear earlier in the Bible. The do I put it in the flow of the Bible? It's not necessarily time based, but since the last great prophet, the actual last one, not the book of Malachi, there passed a period of 400 years.
of silence.
Israel did not have a great prophet until John the Baptist
And it says that you would have come in the spirit of
of
Elijah.
Elijah, right?
And so if you understand it in terms of the flow, when we said the 4 years of silence,
400.
yeah, 400 years of silence, there was not an active voice that was speaking into the nation.
Into the right. No
So
great
the-
prophet
yeah,
speaking to the nation.
and so they have record.
So John the Baptist is the starting point for Jesus's reference to a great thirst that had built up in the nation of Israel. They had the Torah. They knew that there were great prophets who spoke and who were a part of the daily living, who gave words to the nation and words to kings, and you could also interact with the prophet. They didn't have one for 400 years. So when John the Baptist came on the scene, there was a great thirst and a flocking and a movement towards the wilderness where strange John was hanging out, dressed in animal hair and eating wild honey
And in the context,
looking.
they were under oppression to it.
And they, of course, because they were under the boot heel of the Romans.
Yeah, because
So
of what had
this
happened.
and this would usually be the perfect time for a prophet to arise and to be giving them the word of God that could bring his people out of that kind of military and political oppression. So Jesus says to them, from the days of John the Baptist, the kingdom of God has suffered violence. And the violence here refers to that fervent, enthusiastic, aggressive push to hear from John, to follow him, to get the words, to soak it up.
And to get back the
and
principles
to,
that they had lived by that made them to flourish.
yes,
And that's so important because in that context, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the different people were looking in terms of seeking to interpret the Word of God, because the Word of God to them, we have the Bible, but they only had the Torah and they had the books of Isaiah and some of the
yes,
minor
those the
prophets.
great prophets had spoken, and they knew that within all those words there had to be some guidance for this period in which they were living, still under oppression, still needing to be to be saved, to be rescued, to be brought back into a right relationship with their creator. So the people in the days of John the Baptist were violently pursuing the word, the knowledge, wanting to hear what is it that God is saying about these times in which we're living. And so Christ references it. He says, since the day of John the Baptist. Remember, Christ and John the Baptist were just months apart. So he was referring to the same time in which they were living, and he was saying the enthusiastic, aggressive seeking after the word that you have seen in the people who are pursuing John the Baptist. It is indicative of a violent desire to get into the kingdom, because in the kingdom is where you find the prosperity, the safety, the peace, the oneness. And so he says, and violent men take it by force. They become passionate and fervent. And absolutely, the way we are now, we are so hungry for a solution to the crime and violence. We are prepared to look at anything, to the point where there is now a very deliberate thrust in government to bring into communities the concept of restorative justice. What do you think that is?
Principle of the kingdom.
Absolutely. So you said it so softly, I'm not sure you believe it.
Principle of the kingdom. The principle of the kingdom.
All right. So that's what this scripture means.
It was
fervent. To the point of violent hungering, like when Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was praying and crying so that his sweat were as drops of blood.
Because he was under stress and pressure medically.
That is a
and
violent.
That is what they were saying. The capillaries,
the surface of his skin burst and bled. Yeah,
so
it's like when you blow your nose till it bleed.
Yeah.
Or you're crying and blowing your nose and it bleeds. Never happened to me, but I know it can happen.
I've seen people happen. It happened.
Yeah, there are some persons who, they bleed from the nose very easily. So that's what the scripture means, and it is appropriate in this age and time, because we too are fervently seeking solutions to the problems of the day. Fervently seeking solutions.
This is the amplified, and from the days of John the Baptist until the present time, the kingdom of heaven has endured violent assault, meaning the principles of the kingdom have come under assault, and violent men seize it by force as a precious prize. A share in the heavenly kingdom is sought with the most ardent zeal and intense exhortation.
All right.
That sums it up.
Yes, we'll think about that while we are on our break, because it is now 7 a.m. Please stay with us. It's the Morning Connection. Good morning and welcome back to the Morning Connection. Thank you for staying with us. You know, we're very polite people and we're very grateful that you make the time to listen to us. And to the point of our being polite, courteous, and very hospitable, that's why I am sure that Lisa Hannah was not snubbing the lady, because we are known for our hospitality and for our care when visitors are amongst us. So that's just an aside. The other shout out that I want to give is to Mr. Cordell Green, and I am not buttering up the regulator who holds the handle for the license for a radio station. There was a webinar yesterday put on by the Broadcasting Commission. Excellent webinar. The content, the presentation, style, everything about it was on point. If you were not able to join them yesterday, please contact the Broadcasting Commission and find out how you can gain access to the presentation that was done.
It was probably on Facebook, because if they're in communication, they'll have Facebook.
It was on Zoom.
And Facebook.
And it was,
but more than likely, because with Zoom, you can broadcast simultaneously on Facebook. The linking is there.
Aha. So I asked that the presentation be made available because I would like other members of the Best FM family who were not able to make it. It was for 2 hours, 10 a.m. to 12. It was easy for us because we came off at 10 and
I ran into it.
we just ran right into it. So it did make sense for us to go on. What the Broadcasting Commission is doing, and they are to be commended for it, they are taking an early look at how the regulation of the sector will fare under this new digital economy.
Transformation.
And yes, and they went as far as just pursuing some of the trends that are emerging with artificial intelligence, transhumanism. What are the standards that would apply? Also, the fact that the traditional platforms for broadcasting have been broken up into unregulated areas. Social media
That even have greater impact.
has a greater impact. And while you are maintaining standards in the traditional media, your children, your population are having a wild old time out there on the internet. But you still need to have certain sensitivities, because the reason for regulation of media, it's not so you can control what people say or do, but you are
Standards.
really setting standards that shape the mind and the consciousness and the identity of your people. So it remains necessary whether you are using a traditional free-to-air TV or radio service, or you are out there on your own, charting unfamiliar
But
territory.
I tell you something. I don't know if we've observed what has happened in the US of A and in Europe in regards to how they're trying to keep up with what is happening in the media landscape. Because even the question of censorship and who decides what is disinformation, misinformation is even being affected. Because with like with Twitter, remember people's accounts have been
Yes,
shut
yes.
down.
The gatekeepers,
Because-
the morality of
Yeah,
the gatekeepers
keepers.
becomes
a major thing.
a major thing. Yes.
So if and it is even in terms of control, who controls the narrative? Because beyond what happens in mainstream, it what is happening in the other social media, the Twitter, the Telegram,
Yes,
the,
for
the,
example,
the
with what
podcast.
happened to Lisa Hanna.
Yeah.
For that to have been put out there and characterized in a particular way, and that narrative has held sway.
Yes.
It is the occasional voice you see coming up and saying, no man, we saw a full video of her chatting with the lady and they appear to be having a very cordial, good exchange. So no, it doesn't make sense.
And that went viral,
It went viral.
Instantaneous that we were picking it
because
up.
someone set a narrative, and it sparked in the consciousness of persons everywhere, and it kept being
But
repeated.
because
So,
remember, it was somebody was overseas who sent it to us. you know.
yes, yes. Gotta say good morning, or whatever time of the day it
Toronto?
is in UK. No, I think it's Mike who mentioned it. From
the
the
guy
caller
who-
from the UK.
The Windrush guy.
Yes, Winro. I think he was the one who mentioned it. So it is, of course, why we are so emphatic about teaching principles of the kingdom. Because if you, in your own consciousness, have the maturity and the awareness of how these things ought to be consumed and evaluated, and you then can shape your opinion in a more sober way.
As we
So you
talk-
don't start either hating Lisa or hating Kate or taking, you know what I'm saying?
No, but it's a serious thing, It was so very came to the fore in terms of the recent US presidential election and the narrative.
Ah.
Oh, that is just is this true? Is this not true?
Some of the things that it's not true. For example, when you read something that described one or other politician as a trafficker, a human trafficker, or someone who was indulging in sacrificing children, or that there's a pizza place in a city that doesn't really take pizza orders, it's taking orders for all kinds of perverse items on a fictitious menu. You know it's not true, you know it's not true, but somewhere in the back of your mind a question is
It's
asked,
planted.
and a seed is planted, and it is very, very difficult to avoid. You can't sort of bury your head in the sand and say these things don't exist and not pay it any mind because you don't want the stain of it to mar your consciousness. But at the same time, you cannot prevent it from giving rise to some suspicion, some question. It requires great fortitude.
But even as we continue to speak a bit about it, all right, look at the origins of COVID. Remember, some people are saying it came from a lab, and some people say it's conspiracy theory, and now they're going to look at all the sources and say, well, really,
There's a smidgen of truth.
there's something there that we're not seeing. And even in terms of early out, some guys have says, based on what I'm seeing and hearing, even if this thing was to have evolved, the time it would have taken to evolve to where it is, somebody went in and messed with it. I said, no man, foolishness. And some people wrote a letter, some scientists, in terms of saying that it's not true. It's something that has evolved. And now we're hearing that some people had written a piece and say, according to science, that don't make no sense at all. And you're discovering, as they're going in and looking at documentation, that people actually sat down to pervert what science was saying. This don't make sense at all. But anyway, who controls the narrative becomes so very important in this, in all of what is happening. So I'm glad that Cardell, in terms of when we spoke to him, was 2 Thursdays ago or 3 Thursdays ago.
Yes.
He says, I'm not waiting, I'm being innovative.
He's
I'm
moving the ball down the field.
Yeah, moving it. I'm saying this thing is
is
too
to be-
dangerous.
That's to be admired and appreciated. And when you listen to him also, you get the sense of the philosophy that underpins what he's doing, and you would approve.
Yeah.
You would approve. They are wholesome principles that are still
Principles of the kingdom.
relatable, yes, and they still matter in this country. And then he ran he did some case studies of breaches that took place both in Jamaica and in the UK, because Ofcom was the regulator that was referred to in those
Ofcom.
case studies. Office of Communications, the UK, the British
Oh, that's what it's
regulator.
called, Ofcom.
Ofcom office, yeah. They were the regulator, and it was just interesting to see how the different companies sought to justify or explain themselves when called upon for the breach.
Because they have perverted earlier.
There was one, the one that struck me the most. Their music was played with heavy breathing
Behind it.
overlaid in it that really sounded very sensuous, and it was played at an inappropriate hour. And the company that committed the breach sought to explain that it was just breathing and there were no lyrics. And
But in your own
and
mind,
if
the
the
association.
children were hearing it,
Oh, my
the children
Lord.
would know what it is. But they conceded that a child could ask their parent, what
Mommy,
is
what,
that? I thought, wow, you tried to defend that? So that was what caught my interest, the ways in which people didn't just fall on the sword and say, okay, that was inappropriate, we apologize. Maybe, I think perhaps they imposed fines.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to find a way to defend what you've done, more so. But that was interesting because
But-
it was
but-
just sounds. It was just heavy breathing.
Yeah, but the brain works. Remember, I keep saying
Yes.
our perceptions are impacted by what we see, we hear, and we speak, and how the brain operates. It brings everything together in a second. So you make an association. If you hear that kind of a breathing, what does it speak to?
Yes. What response does it stimulate in the subconscious.
of
Yeah.
persons and
Because you know when somebody's breathing heavy because they just walked up a hill.
it's different from a different kind of breathing. But whether we like it or not, these guys, even in terms of how people advertise now, they've looked a lot in terms of brain chemistry and how the brain works. And they've tapped into it psychologically to produce certain effects.
Sure,
And they
right.
know.
Yes.
They know.
It's
they
chemical.
know.
It's chemical.
They know. They
So,
know. Yes.
so a subtext to the presentation touched a little bit on that autonomous response that the human body makes to certain stimuli. It's autonomous, so you can't control it without some form of interference that comes from the same type. So if it is a chemical response, if the autonomous response is carried through chemical conductors, you need the same in order to interrupt it. You can't override it by positive thinking or by, I think.
Have you heard about the God gene?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So, all right, let's talk. Transhumanism, the interface between artificial intelligence, prosthetics, and the human body, that came up for some discussion, largely because there is the concern that there is a point in the mutation of the two when the human being loses its essential characteristic and the machine takes over. There is that concern. Some have said that artificial intelligence or use of it or the embracing of it is the real existential threat to humanity.
It really is.
Because it is really the loss of your essential human qualities that would bring to an end the reign of humankind as a dominant force in this
that
realm.
Some people are pushing that agenda hard. And remember
Yes,
darkness, that was one of the things that darkness kept alluding to.
That is that. But the point he made to there is I think is the CTO, the Chief Technical Officer of Google.
It was on
no, Cordell, Mr. Green, referred to him in his presentation as being one of the chief architects behind all of Google's innovations in that direction. There are some who feel no reluctance, no shame, no embarrassment, no.
And I feel not at all because it's about control. It's about how we can, as it were, in psychology, we have something that condition the people in a certain way to get a certain result.
But what of yourself? Because many of those persons use those enhancements.
Yeah, but then the question is who controls? That is always the question that we have to answer.
But you see, you can't assume that you would be unaffected by the strategies and the tools that you are using to change others.
Right.
Because they're using it as well. I mean, the truth of it, the fact of the matter is, could I use some artificial skin to mask or to repair my human skin? It's entirely possible.
Let's define what transhumanism is. It's a philosophical and intellectual movement which advocates for the enhancement of the human condition and by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies that can greatly enhance longevity and cognition. It also predicts the inevitability of such technologies in the future. This is Wikipedia.
Yes.
So there's a philosophy behind of it.
Yeah, but there's nothing morally reprehensible in it. And that's the point that we always make. Certainly I make it all the time, that technology is a tool and the morality of it is determined by the user.
Right. So the philosophy of the person who is using it will affect to what extent they will use it in terms of
as a tool or a weapon.
Right.
Okay. So, I, for one, believe that it would be beneficial to mankind to have available to it these technologies which can indeed improve the enjoyment of life, good health, longevity as well for those who want to live forever or live longer.
You want to live forever?
I don't.
You remember?
I would only want to live forever if all the people I love were living forever. I don't want to be alone.
You remember we saw this thing with this human, this lady who, and she says, the only thing I do not have is a soul. I can do everything for you. I've never seen that.
No, I don't know what movies it is.
It's not
that?
a movie. It is actual.
Oh! You're talking about the robot.
The robot who says, "I can do everything."
The humanoid
robot, and then she says, "The only thing I do not have is a soul."
And so you know that in the way that you and I say something, she didn't say anything. It's just a recording of something
yes,
that was plucked out of the database and played.
Played in there. I'm going, okay.
Right.
Oh,
it's no her saying something is no different from the TV speaking to you.
You understand? Oh boy.
All right.
When we were
But
growing up,
we will not use
a mad scientist. You remember that expression?
Yes,
you watch the
with the hair.
cartoons.
Yeah, with the hair looking wild.
Or what's his name? The brain and brain and something.
Pink,
Remember that Pinky and the brain. What are we gonna do today? We're gonna take over humankind, and they always failed in their conquest to conquer mankind.
All right. In your absence, Pastor Percival, I don't think you were listening. I spoke about our special guest.
She's coming.
Yes.
Is she beautiful?
I expect her. She is beautiful.
Oh wow.
And married. Not that you asked.
No, I didn't.
Just saying for the other listeners.
She's a beautiful lady, but she's very bright.
But she is what? Not
she's a beautiful lady and she's very bright.
Oh yes,
she's a master teacher. So
she's a master teacher.
She's beauty and the brain.
Beauty and the brain. All right. So I keep wanting to say Dr. Allison. Am I prophesying? Perhaps. Michelle Allison is going to join us in a short while. And these are the areas that I have proposed for discussion with Michelle. So you can think on it even as we prepare to meet her. I'll say them very quickly because it's almost 7:30 and we're going to be taking our break at 7:30. So I want to discuss with her how state-funded education is addressed in her adoptive country. You know that in Jamaica, our constitution guarantees state-funded education for primary and all age levels. It's up to 12 years?
Up to 12. It's up to 12.
Up to 12
That's what
years.
the constitution says.
Yes. And I'm trying to remember if it specifically mentions early childhood, because it might assume that it's between 6 and 12. Although we are spending a lot we are making provisions for early childhood education. So that's important in terms of the state's commitment to fund education for its population, for its citizens. There is no guarantee beyond 12 years old, and that is reprehensible to me, must change. I suspect it is something of a different order in the USA where she is. So I want to know what applies in her school district where she is and how it impacts personal development, because individuals must be well prepared and educated. And then national development in terms of, how it is aligned with objectives for growth in the United States. I do want to understand that. And then the second issue I have raised with her, I'm just sharing, letting you know, all of you, including Pastor Percy. School boards in Jamaica are populated with political appointees, and the Ministry of Education exercises centralized authority over policy and the curriculum in schools. I just want to know how it is for her elsewhere, because as we look to make some changes here, it would be good to know what our neighbors are doing, how effective those strategies are, and how we could make some changes here. And then I really gave her 4 things. I asked what in her experience is the critical success factor in achieving the goal of well-educated and socially conscious citizens. I think she teaches in the middle school, so she gets them and she has taught at different levels. So she's been able to see.
Are
Right, a
outcomes.
wider range. And then the last one as we come to the break, I want us to have a general discussion on strategies to bring education policy in alignment with developmental objectives and to just take a look at Jamaica's policy position, which I have I was going to say I've spat on it.
No, you have
I-
not. You are
But I
not
did
of it.
not.
No, don't. No, don't
That's
even
what
say.
came into my mind.
No,
True.
no,
I rejected.
No, you didn't.
Or I didn't do that. That's true.
You didn't do that. I will
I'm
not
not
have
going
you
to.
characterize yourself like that.
Thank you
Yeah,
for defending me,
do that.
Pastor.
You're not
Anyway,
gonna-
so we're going to look at Jamaica's policy position, what it is that we desire when we say let's educate the masses, and have some general conversations around that. So let's take the break and we'll be right back. Whenever we have persons from the diaspora who are interested in giving us the benefit of their experience, I, for one, dive into it. I love to hear what it is that our people are learning in other jurisdictions. And whenever they are willing to share it, I think we should all be interested in hearing it because that is how you learn new things. And that's how you can increase your storehouse of knowledge and get different strategies for addressing problems. We learn from one another, and that's a part of the Dominion mandate as well, to work together to solve the common problems of humanity.
Yeah, I remember as we exchange ideas about what's happening in our country, and I'm reminded of this is in 2003. I had gone to Greece and I was on the way
Where?
back.
Greece?
Yes.
Ah,
And visited some of the sites that we read of.
the Acropolis.
Yes, and so on. And one of my friends, he's English, and his wife was a principal, I think, in the British system. And we're talking about school and comparing notes. And she says, I'm glad that I'm retiring. I says, why is that? Don't you enjoy teaching? She says, yes, I enjoy teaching, but we can't seem to get anything stabilized. Like we introduce a policy or something and to see the outcomes of what we're doing, what we're changing. Because every year, something new
Yes.
comes up and I'm going, so when do they expect me for the children to learn? Because you have to do, as you call it, repetition for consolidation, that it becomes an important part of what is being done. So that in itself was so very interesting. And I'm going, okay. She says, these people introduce these new policies on how we must do things based on research, but they don't really know what is happening on the ground. And so I said, okay, I found that interest. And it has never left me, that comment. Somebody up there, go to university, come up with something new. It
No,
doesn't
because
work itself out, and then we keep changing. So you really don't see the impact of what needs to happen in terms of does this really work or not. Because every 2-3 years, dependent on who is doing what, this is what happens to you. I'm going, oh boy. So I'm going to it's going to be interesting to learn from our beloved sister Alison in terms of what her experience has been as she joins us this morning. Welcome, my dear lady. How are you today?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Aha,
And as
there's
you
that
said,
smile.
she's accompanied by her
Your bodyguard.
bodyguard or protection.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Michelle.
everyone. How are you guys doing today?
We are well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, we have with us now, I keep calling you Dr. Michelle Allison in my mind. So, I have a feeling that is something to come.
She's been referred to as a prophet on this program.
Or
And it's not-
dyslexic, remember?
But not being dyslexic, but somebody, one or two different hosts has come to the program and referred to you as prophetess.
Yes. Every now and then
Yes.
I say something.
And it is prophetic
but
in
I
nature.
keep thinking, Dr. Michelle Allison. But that is
Not
to come.
there yet.
That
You
is
get
to
in
come.
there though.
And it's only because you have not written the paper. But in terms of your experience, how long a teacher?
Well, I've been in the education system close to 29 years.
I love it close to.
That means she's still very
That
young.
includes her years as a student
No, not at all.
No. That means she's still very young.
from Shibon.
From Shibon. I
Yes.
don't know if do you have a history of teaching in your family?
Yes, my aunt was a math professor, math teacher actually at Merle Grove.
Okay.
And she's Will L. Henry.
Yes.
There's actually a building in her name at that institution at
you've
this
visited?
time.
Okay.
I have not this visit, but before. She was very influential in my life as to provide me the foundations for being a great mathematician.
Oh, you love math.
I do enjoy math.
You
That
do.
was something that was established in our family that we had no choice but to learn math.
Okay. And I'm assuming that a great relationship with your dad who kind of influenced you. that way.
Correct. Yes.
You know, there's a study that has said that females who have great relationships with their dad go on to do well in the mathematical subjects like math and physics and chemistry.
Numeracy. Yeah.
Yes. I saw that and I was like,
Yes.
whoa, my daughter
You're-
loves math.
All right, so you're causing a few persons now to reflect on their
The
relationship
relationship
with their fathers.
Yes,
and say,
yes.
that's why.
That's the reason why, because they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Numeracy.
yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. But back to Michelle.
Yes, but that was a part. We have to get who Michelle is so we can understand.
There's a lot to Michelle.
Oh, wow. Yes.
How long have you lived outside of Jamaica?
I'm going to say close to maybe about 32, 33 years, I think.
Okay.
I think. Yes.
So pretty much you kind of entered the education system.
right when I got in.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got in. So where did you go to school here? It seems
I'm
like
a Wilmarian.
Okay, Agriquatides.
Yes, sir.
My
And then I
sisters
spent
all
one.
went to Wolmer's.
Yes, and then I spent 1 year at St. Andrews. My last.
St. Andrews.
St. Andrews.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I have connections here. All my sisters went to Wolmer's, and my daughter went to St. Andrews. And my mom would have gotten there, but you know, when she was younger, you have to have a scholarship to go. And it's interesting just about, and when my daughter was graduating from St. Andrew, my mom says, did you know that I got a scholarship here to go to that school and I couldn't take it up because my parents couldn't afford for me
it.
to go there. That was before Norman Manley did what he did.
Public schools.
In terms of
Yes.
public school. So there's
Yes.
connection.
My prior sisters, they went to Wilmer's, or they're also Wilmarians, and it was a boarding school at that time.
That's a long time.
The idea of boarding schools, especially, so did they live on campus?
Yes, they did.
It was a requirement that
Correct.
you bring the ladies in and,
Correct.
and
At
train
that
them.
time.
All right. While the royals are visiting, I won't even talk about
Boarding school.
what happens in boarding schools that are patterned off English public
Grammar
schools.
school,
And
grammar
they,
schools,
yes,
yeah.
I want to take us a little closer to home.
Okay.
I was, of course, the invitation to join us this morning took place in a way more social setting.
You was eating food and enjoying yourself.
Absolutely. But I was just intrigued by so many of the discussions I've had with Michelle touching on how education services are delivered in her adoptive country and, doing a little compare and contrast, but not harmfully so, wanting to see what is happening where she is that could be of use to Jamaica. So I sent you a few questions last night because I didn't want to take you completely by surprise.
You're still taking me by surprise. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to review them. So let me just be forthright with that.
See, going on. You okay. All right.
I'm good to go.
Okay.
Good to go. All right.
All right. Well, we're
As
gonna
best as I can.
All right. So, then I'll start with
the softball
With the
ones?
soft one. Let me find it.
What has
'cause-
been your experience? You were educated in Jamaica
Correct.
in terms of our high school system.
Correct.
You've taught in different-
Only in the U.S.
Okay.
Yes.
You mean what
different
age
level,
groups?
middle
I've
group?
only done elementary. So I
Oh.
do from pre-K, from the 3-year-olds right up to 11-year-olds.
Okay.
That's the perfect age.
That's a formative year.
The
That is
formative
correct.
years. Yeah. Yeah. So you've been shaping young
Yes.
American minds. So I started with a very very gentle topic.
Sure.
In Jamaica, under our constitution, there is a provision for children to receive state-funded education up to about age 12, Pastor tells me, because it's to all age.
Constitution, yeah. All
That's it.
Okay.
Which this is from 1962, so you can imagine one didn't really see how useful and a Jamaican educated beyond the age of 12 could be. What would they do with that education?
Right.
Just the same way I think at one time the question would have been asked, what would women do with education? So we have state-funded education up to age 12
Right.
or thereabouts. What applies in your school environment?
The initial age would be age 6. They'll have to be, depending on the birth date, the expectation is that from age 6, it's compulsory. It's required that you're in school. There is a clause. I live in Florida, so we remember they go by state governing
State,
rules.
yes.
So each state has their own provision, and within Florida, by the age of 16, some know this, that they have to, if they wish to withdraw from school, a 16-year-old can withdraw from school without the parents' consent.
Wow.
Okay, so once they get to that age, they can submit their documentation, prove that they no longer wish to stay in high school, and they are dismissed. But the typical age would be up to 12th grade.
And that is up
What
to
age
what?
is that in
18?
12th grade?
That would be 18.
Okay, that's interesting.
And this is for state-funded
Correct.
education, right? But you have
And
a certain
states-
freedom from age
choose.
16.
Yes, from 16 onward, yes.
Yeah.
That is optional for the student. A lot of parents, I don't think, are aware of that, but it is there.
Not something you emphasize on the
Correct.
first day of school. And remember now, when you get to 16,
16, you can
that's-
decide whether you want
I
to stay
wonder
to
what
school or
such a right would do in Jamaica. Would persons voluntarily, you think, elect to remove themselves from school at age 16?
What are they going to do?
Well, that is the great question, but sometimes a student figures that, they don't see the significance or the value in them remaining, or unfortunately they're not being they're not successful in school, and
It's frustrating.
they're
and you'd
frustrated.
rather-
Correct.
yes.
So
Have you seen much of that? Students voluntarily
I do know of
removing
one or
themselves?
two cases of my own students who have
Yes.
opted to do that, with parents coming back and asking me to assist. But unfortunately, it is written that they have that option, and the parent,
Fundamental rights and freedoms
correct, at
once they
age 16,
exercise it.
correct.
Yeah.
The parent is aware of it, so please understand that they're not done without the knowledge,
The
of,
knowledge
the parent.
of the parent.
But
yes.
the child at that point can choose to opt.
Okay. All right. So
All right, we're going to take a short break at this point, and then we'll be right back with Michelle. All right, welcome back. Our guest today is Michelle Allison. I think Pastor Percival just talked every good stuff out of her in
I
the short
did
break.
not.
I am
did
just
not.
hoping she left something for
I did
you,
not. I did not. Yeah.
our listeners. What did you leave?
Everything. Just getting to
He was
All right,
nonstop,
so-
actually. He kept going.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd sent a question. You haven't seen them, so it
Sure.
doesn't really matter. School boards in Jamaica are populated with political appointees, and the Ministry of Education exercises centralized authority over policy and curriculum.
Okay.
That's the format here. What applies in your school district?
I live in the area of Broward County, so those are elected officials.
Aha, elected by the people.
Correct.
How does that work? You got to say a little bit more about that. They campaign,
They campaign.
put out their manifesto, what they want to
Correct.
see.
Correct.
Oh, that's just brilliant.
Yes, and they are voted in. And if they so wish to...
You're an elected official.
No. As principal, we're not elected.
Oh.
We are appointed. So we're appointed by the school board. The school board are elected officials. And so they are the governing body that oversees the
Policy.
and oversees the procedures and provides the directives as to how we
The policy for the particular
correct.
school.
That is correct. And then we have a
So-
superintendent who reports to the school board, and under that, then everything else is structured under him or her who's
Right.
elected or selected for that position.
So the superintendent is not elected; they're selected.
They're selected.
The
Okay.
board.
The board
The board
selects.
selects a superintendent.
Correct.
So you have a school board that runs a grouping of schools, or just that school?
Oh no, it is the sixth largest district in the United States.
Okay. So each school has a
Principal,
right.
and then over that there are established groups of directors,
Yes.
and then they are overseen by the superintendent. So, and the superintendent reports to the school board.
So here in Jamaica,
What-
school boards are individualized.
Political appointees?
No. Individualized to the school. What I'm hearing you saying that the school board is over a group of schools. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Oh, so that's a difference.
So that's another difference
different
too.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you get the opportunity to have policy and planning proceed from I'm going to say statewide, but a district-wide
It's
perspective.
district. It is
Yeah,
district.
a district-wide perspective. So whatever it is that you want to see emerge out of your schools, you
persons.
elect persons for the board who will carry that message.
That is correct, but it must be
Alright.
consistent with the Florida state statutes.
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
So that means
that's a difference for us.
that's a
in
major
Jamaica.
difference.
That's a
That
major
means
difference.
the governor would impact what happens at the school board in terms of policy.
Not. It depends on how it is set up.
Okay.
So, our governor, depending on what the issues, could remove, someone
From the school board?
from the school board if they're inappropriate. But there's some rules and regulations
Naturally,
regarding
yes.
that, and how the school board itself was set up and determined.
Okay.
So, but he can appoint someone if someone is removed. If
Okay.
it's not in the electoral season.
Season.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's
But
interesting.
The reason I made mention of it is because the most recent report on transformation of the education system in Jamaica spoke about greater stakeholder input in the running of the schools and the setting of policy and so on. And one point that came up for mention was school boards.
Right.
How are these boards selected and so on? And so I was curious to see that
Yes.
it's
from the people.
It's from the people. Which
Correct.
That was the point. All right.
But just to explore that issue, because I've sat on a school board,
Mm-hmm.
that I was interested to know.
Did you campaign to get on that board?
I campaigned because I was a PTA president in the sense of that, But that school board under our Education Act has, if it is government, then the government appoints. But even with that, there are some posts that are people-centered, meaning the staffing, you have a teacher rep, you have the students sit on the school board, that's the elected, whether it is the president or the student council, the PTA. In some schools, you have a whole past students association. So those are posts that are the persons. And then because if it's owned by the church, then the board chair is somebody who the church appoints, and then you have different people. So I found that interesting in regards
Correct.
to the difference, yeah.
So that's more of a decentralization of governance.
Yeah.
But within the school board itself, how it's set up, it is by the district. So we have the school board itself that operates several hundred schools. And that's
Okay.
from elementary to middle and to high.
Okay.
All right. And then the superintendent oversees all of those schools.
Okay.
All right. So, and then the school board is the governing body. So underneath that would be the principals, who are now a part of that structure.
Okay.
And within that structure, the principals now will have their PTAs, other, influence the student, government, and all
Right.
of those pieces will be a part of that level
Okay.
at the
it's a-
school level.
So that's a totally different, yeah.
Yes, because I'm sensing that once you get that community input in how policy is set for the group of schools,
Right.
it then trickles down through the superintendent to the principal, and the principal has a certain degree of autonomy in making sure
Correct.
that the house runs in accordance
Correct.
with the rules.
Correct.
So you wouldn't have principals being frustrated on the ground because they don't have the authority or the resources to implement strategies that are in alignment with the policy.
There's still some frustration.
There's no.
No, I'm just saying.
Yes,
they're
but
always
there's
in
also a
Yeah.
grassroots too. Please understand that at that level of the school itself, there are different ad hoc groups that are able to influence from the bottom
From
up.
the bottom up.
Okay, so we have, groups that are, for ESC, which is, where special students, special needs students.
Okay.
You have groups who are maybe multicultural issues. You could have, groups where they want to hear, they want to see different things being placed in the school. So from the PTSA or PTSO boards, they can move that issue from the grassroots level right up to
Right
the
up.
top.
Right.
You know.
And then I assume that when it comes around to election time
Those
for
are
the,
what
for the
comes in.
board,
Which is what happened
absolutely.
in Virginia.
So the pressure the pressure comes.
From top and bottom.
Top and
and
bottom.
sometimes we
Good.
do see policies
Yes.
made directly from,
Yeah.
from those.
And then it gives you, I think, very fertile soil for activism.
Correct.
There
Because
is-
you know
there
that
is-
there will be a point when, if you put in the necessary effort from the ground, you can see it come to fruition. It's time
Correct.
for a
Uh,
break.
th- th-
All right,
there-
let's
there
take a
is-
break, please. When we get back, I'm going to invite Michelle to speak on her experience as to the critical success factor in achieving the goal of well-educated and socially conscious citizens. What is that secret sauce? Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Good morning and welcome back. I have Michelle to myself for a few minutes because Pastor Percival has taken a refreshment break. We've introduced that now. And I want to read something to you. It is an extract from the introduction of the Patterson Report, which is the latest report we have on transforming Jamaica's education system. The report acknowledged that Jamaica follows UNESCO's declaration that children do not only have the right to be in school, but also to learn while there and to emerge with the skills they need to find secure, well-paid work. The pursuit of this fundamental right animates the work and recommendations of this report. Now, of course, I read that and my spirit is immediately offended. I'm like, what? I didn't leave school just so I could find secure, well-paid work. I left school so I could participate in creating an economy that can both employ others and provide me with, a secure income. Way longer than what would be required for the UNESCO declaration. But I wanted to zero in on this idea that for Jamaica, with its post-colonial history and history of slavery and so on, we want to educate in a different direction, not for persons to come out and be employees, but
Okay.
to come out with the ability to work in partnership with others and create an economy that can support, a decent lifestyle. Let's put it that way. So I'm curious.
Okay.
If you could identify a principle that drives the objective of education in your school district, what would you say it is?
I think it would be to empower young people to be the best that they can be. And so there is a uniformed discussion or emphasis based on providing many different aspects to learning that can meet the needs of the student. And the philosophy is to garner that interest as early as we can and develop them so that they can be the best. So whether you wish to go into the occupation of being a lawyer or doctor, or you want to be a more vocational, there are different aspects to providing education, to provide support, to provide all the different things that are needed so that that student can be the best that they can be.
So it's very personal. It's more people oriented than
It is
even
extremely people oriented.
nationalistic in terms of what does the state want from the citizen. It is more developing the citizen so that they can give and participate as they see fit.
Correct.
Is that
It's a
kind of-
struggle. I mean, it's some people may say, is that realistic? But I do see when my teachers come to school, there is an earnest attempt to make sure that they are meeting the needs of their students. There is a direct passion to ensure that whatever that child's interest is, that they are trying to get them on that path to learning. And they have to, one, value the education that they're given. There is a level of taking it for granted because so much is given to them. When I compare it to what we received here in Jamaica, we don't take our education for granted, at least when I grew up here.
That's true.
It was instilled in us how of much value it would be to your future. And our goal then is to instill that in our students at my location. The challenges that we see are varied. We do see things such as the socioeconomic disadvantages that play itself out and does not offer a level playing field to many of our boys and girls who are coming in, and trying to get that to be a level playing field that all students can feel accepted and welcomed. Therefore, at that elementary level, the struggle is to just get everyone to
Interested in their education.
correct.
And value what it will do for them.
Correct.
But then it begs the question, how do the children formulate their desires, their needs for education? Is that coming from the parents? I mean,
I'm a strong believer that it has to come from the home.
Yeah.
It has to be. That is your first place of learning.
so remember, you have a
Education.
secret sauce question to answer. As she said, home, it reminded me.
So, I've seen hundreds of students come through, and it has always shown that the parental support that is given to a child makes a huge difference to the trajectory as to where they're going. And if your education is supported, it provides a wonderful avenue in which to grow or to leap from, so that whatever the teachers are providing in the classroom,
Support.
it is supported, and it provides the framework in which you're now going to move to the middle and to those tertiary levels.
Okay.
So what in your experience is the secret sauce to achieving
Before
that
you-
success?
Before you
Yes.
go to the secret sauce
Yes.
question, can you describe the socio-economic background of your students in your school?
Okay.
You're in Fort Lauderdale.
Sure.
The-
So
the
I cannot
average
be
student.
specific, but I can be
Your school.
sure. So remember, Broward County is a very large county in itself, and therefore, it depending on where you are, okay, the demographics will change.
Okay.
Okay. So I am situated on the east side of the county, and within that sector, we have my school has 50% Hispanics.
Wow.
Yes.
Habla
Yes.
español?
Yes, 50%. And then
She speaks at 50%.
and then I have the other quarter would be whites and the other quarter would be blacks.
Farmers. Okay.
Which would be mixed. You have Caribbean, you have multiracial. They'll be grouped in that.
And I know for the Hispanic, the Latin American, they are strong on family.
They're strong in what?
Family.
Correct.
In that area.
But it depends. You have to also family, yes, but they're blue collar workers. So many
Okay.
of them are really at work.
Okay, the time, okay.
So that they're spending their time just trying to make ends meet.
Okay.
So 2 or 3 jobs are being held down just to make sure that the family can have a roof over their head. So when they walk into school, many of them have never seen the alphabet before. They have no knowledge of what the letter names and sounds will be. So it takes
So
a great
no early childhood
no
education.
none.
Because I picked up from what you said that state education would typically start at
At
6.
Mhm.
So whatever happens between 0 and 6 is
Yes.
on mommy's dime.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So,
So
you
you
know,
start with nothing and you
I would
produce.
say I would start with nothing. Not that
But
not
you
is not
can.
a, you
It
can.
can be that
Yeah.
way.
So you in some cases you are finding that the struggle is to get them up to where they need to be. And remember, at 6, that's a long time. So you know to
Zero
just
to five,
yeah, 0 to 5. So that's a lot of learning lost there.
Okay.
So it is now on the teachers to really do miracles to get them up to par where they need to be. Because remember, at third grade is the retention year where students are held back if they're not meeting proficiency.
Okay.
So you're talking grade 3 here,
Yes, right.
where they're told you are failing.
Okay. So you have a whole lot of work,
Correct.
and so what you're saying is that what drives your process is the support from the home.
It is definitely support from the home. I'm a firm believer that I have seen with my own eyes that students who have been supported, even if the parent is not literate, but they're able to put those value systems in place. That is a core piece to not 100% proof, but to provide the best
Foundation.
foundation for learning. So remember, third grade is our retention year. There are no
Okay.
ifs or buts about it. And that means that students must meet a level of proficiency. What does proficiency mean? Proficiency doesn't mean that you are passing. Proficiency means that you are at a point that we're able to move you to the next grade level. There's a lot of misconception about that. And sometimes moving you to the next grade level is just adequate progress. Adequate progress could be 1 year behind.
Okay.
See where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
So you don't have to pass.
What you call pass.
Right.
You know, what
meaning
we call
achieve
pass.
a grade above an average point.
Correct.
Ah, I see.
Correct. So you can say my child has moved on to the next grade level, but you need to check to see
Where
how
they started.
Correct.
Okay. So, but that's true because with the intervention that we're doing in this community,
Yes.
one of the challenges was that you had children who were like in grade 4, 5,
Grade 6,
yeah,
ready to.
who were at pre-K level in terms of their reading.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So we
interesting.
still have those challenges too.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have a 5th grader and they're still at the pre-K level.
Wow. So, and the question is, as a principal, it means you have committed staff. People are committed to
Oh,
the
definitely.
task.
Teachers don't get into this for the money. I'm sorry. They get into this because they have a core belief that they can make a difference.
Okay. And so that's a starting value. You
They
spoke
have
about
to-
values. So there are values that are important in the teacher,
Correct.
but values that are important in the parent.
Correct.
So what are some of those values? Not for the teacher, but for the parents that you see has helped the process of education for you.
It's not a one size fits all.
Okay.
Okay.
Just give up some of
You
that.
have to have a family unit that values the education and values and respects the educational process
Okay.
and respects the teacher.
Okay.
You know, if you are within a setting and you have a parent who says you don't have to do your homework, go to bed, you know, or the parent says, you know, I don't like that teacher. You have already set up that child to have indifference towards that classroom,
Okay.
towards the setting. You know, the support systems have to be very deliberate. You have to ensure that the child understands that there's no space between you and me, the teacher. And that if there's going to be a discussion about something that went down in that classroom, have it away from the student.
Okay.
So the student understands that the mom and the teacher are on, or dad are on the same page.
Same choir book.
Right, right. But it could be something really disturbing that the teacher may have said that upsets the parent, but that's not done in front of the child.
Okay.
And, you know, you move that away. And what the child now understands is that there's a relationship that was built with the mom or dad, and therefore I need to fall in line.
Okay.
Okay?
Because at that age you need to learn to fall in.
You
line,
got it. You have to
respond
know the
authority.
boundaries. Yes.
Okay.
That's a crucial piece. Understanding the boundaries within in when to work and to operate. Everything that you do must be a deliberate act.
Okay.
You can't, you know,
Intentionality.
it has to have some form of intentionality.
Okay.
It must
Wow.
be deliberate. You know, as parents, we need to value the system, understand it, learn from it, adapt. There are traps. There are things that you need to know before going in. Educate yourself. Look for all the resources that are possible for your child. If you find that your child is not on grade level, there are a lot of resources. Sometimes, as principals, we're blamed for not having the resources, but it is available. But sometimes you will hear, no, I had to work, or other things come up. But if you don't take the time
And make it a
and
priority.
make it a priority.
Yeah, in Jamaica, we have a history of church involvement
Right.
in schools.
Right.
And Jamaica still has the record for having the most churches per square mile or square kilometer, however we're measuring it. So we know that Christian faith and principles are often very present in how schools are run. We have an idea that it is not so in America, because that in a lot of what is out
Separation
there,
of church and state.
the separation between church and state sometimes gets quite brutal. There is actually an ad that you sometimes see on cable. There's a man whose surname is Reagan, who has been running a campaign out of the Florida area about keeping church out of schools or state. It's something about, I see it occasionally. I'm like, people are still talking about that. Nevertheless, I just have to ask, when you talk about the principles of discipline and boundaries and so on, I'm hearing some of the kingdom principles coming out. How careful does one have to be, and how do you manage to get wholesome values at play in the environment without crossing the line?
It's difficult. It's a challenge. When you're working within a organization, you have to understand that you have to respect what the organization provides or outlines.
And that is a kingdom principle.
Correct.
Give unto Caesar.
You have to.
You have to respect.
There are issues that are of conflict to possibly one's belief, but it is also what you do in those settings as a principal is that I, for me personally, let me just speak for me, I do not speak about politics and religion
Okay.
in my setting.
In your job.
In my setting, I keep those two issues out. I've
Okay.
always been guided by my dad. Those are things that you'll never win.
That's for
okay.
home. Right. And even
we-
at home,
Yes,
if the dinner is too big,
correct.
if it's a big family event, you
Correct.
keep that out. So
With
let me tell you
respect.
that you have a fan online here,
Yes.
who says, I don't agree with any church in any school, period. So yeah, this is Conrad. Hail up, Mr. Conrad.
So what happens is that if you look at how the schools are operated, as I said, it's through a policy and procedure, and I stick to that. I stick to the guidelines of the policies and the procedures. Some issues are brought up that are maybe in conflict with, let's say, a teacher is uncomfortable about a certain topic, then he or she would come to me regarding that issue, and I will find an alternative route to not have that teacher do that particular study or lesson and find another person to do that for them. But I ensure that whatever the guidelines are for the educational practices, we have specific
in strict compliance.
standards that we must follow. I will make sure that they're followed through.
So give me an example, please.
Without going into too much, sex ed. You know,
The hotspot.
it is a hot topic. There are certain things that are discussed. If the curriculum is available to all, you can hop on to any website and you can actually download the actual curriculum. That's one thing a lot of parents are not privy to, is to the fact that nothing is hidden from them.
We're going to talk about digital literacy.
So
So
the
let me put that in
entire
the back.
curriculum is outlined as to what we are required to teach. The resources in which and the books that we use are all available. You teachers from our district do have access to look. Parents do have access to the
see
curriculum to see
exactly
exactly
what
what it is. It doesn't mean that those are the basals. We call that the basals. It doesn't mean that the teachers don't have the authority, freedom to bring other resources in to support the learning, and they do. Depending on what it is, they have to pass it through me so that I can approve it. But for the most part, they do have the opportunity to bring more additional resources to the table. But back to the question of whether or
So
not
for
if
example,
it's a conflict, the the teachers cannot bring in their own personal views. Okay, if and when it does happen, it is I have the authority to discipline. Okay, so whether you are a Republican or an independent or a Democrat and you have strong feelings on certain issues and you feel that you want to persuade your group, you are not in a position to do that. Okay, you can bring information in and be objective, that's different. However, you are not in a position to influence. That is the parents' role and parents' role only.
Oh,
Okay,
that's interesting.
yes, that is
it's the parents' role.
So what you do is, as a teacher, you serve up the menu of what is there, and
in accordance with the regulation,
accordance with the
because there are
regulations.
some things that are there in fine print which can't make its way into the main menu. If I get the meaning, if I understand what she's saying, it's not every variant of the that would make it onto the curriculum.
Right.
You know,
So the question is, persons' philosophical beliefs will affect the way that they live their lives.
are we talking about teachers now?
Yeah, we're
or-
talking teachers.
Yeah, teachers. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, right. And so if a teacher is supposed to teach something, I alluded to that earlier, and they feel uncomfortable, they come to you and says, Madam Principal,
Correct.
I really can you let
And
me off
I respect their position on that as a principal, and I will look up for other options.
okay. So
And
that is-
I'm still an educator,
Which
and in some
might
cases I go
mean-
in and teach it
Yeah,
myself.
which might mean someone else would just
Correct.
teach that segment.
I'm
Right.
yes,
Yes.
as
How
you
big
can
is your
see.
So what have you gone in to teach?
how big
I
is your
want to
school? How big
know.
is your school number?
I have 800 approximately. At its high point, about 810, and we're post COVID, I guess you may say. We're about 710, 720.
Oh, one quick thing. How did you manage during COVID? You're in Florida. You went, school was open?
My district did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I felt were on top of our game when it came to providing access to our students. I could walk you through. It would take hours here to
Well, you did a
describe.
fantastic job.
I wouldn't say in all areas. Please understand that, but we try to be ahead of the game. Our students already had a 1-to-1 ratio with laptops.
Okay.
So that is a big lift when we had to shut everything down in March. Remember that period?
And go online.
And we had to go online. The issue was just the distribution of those laptops, getting them because they were in the classroom. So
Okay.
when our students left, they didn't take anything with them.
Okay.
So we had to ensure that they got the laptops in their hand. Not only that, we had to update the systems to make sure that they were viable. They could use them at home.
Okay.
So they required some updating, but we had 1-to-1 ratios. It was really quick,
So quick
within
up.
1 week.
You were up and
In 1 week.
is that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of the principal that was there? in
No,
your
no, no.
school?
This is district level now.
Oh, okay.
This would be a
I'm just
district.
wondering,
Yes.
because leadership, I figure.
And that's the leadership under Mr. Runcie at the time.
Yeah.
Mr. Runcie is of Jamaican
descent.
blood,
That is
some-
that's
yes,
correct. So we were able to have that one-on-one immediately, and within 1 week, teachers were trained to work from an online system. We used Teams as our
Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams, and we were able to accomplish a lot in that 1 week. So spring break was used as a learning training time frame, and many hours were spent. By Monday morning, after that break, we were up and running.
All right, this
Wow.
is a good point to take our 7:30 break. 8:30 break. Took the 7:30 one already.
She was going back in
Yeah,
time. I was
yeah.
wondering what was happening.
All right, we're just please stay with us. We'll be right back. Yes, just for the benefit of those who are participating in the show online, we are streaming on Lola 99 YouTube, also on the TMC at Best 100 FM YouTube channel. Occasionally, I think one of the stream has gone down. So if you miss a beat, just this morning you gotta be a little agile between one and the, and we are still on Twitch and I think on Facebook. We are on Facebook also, yes, and on Facebook, yes. But we are online for those who like to see the sunshine and a little bit of the Ligani Club, and of course you get to see Michelle, who Pastor Percival is leading the charge with this one because he's a frustrated teacher. Are you frustrated?
No, I love teaching.
He loves teaching,
I
but he
think
is
that's
doing
when
pastoring.
Yeah, you understand? The
And
greatest.
then his wife's name is also Michelle. So I think talking to Michelle is a daily occupation for him. Continue, Pastor. Continue.
You have to get that one in it.
Yes, man. Because Michelle is online, so she must notice that this interview is
I
sparking a lot of
really-
interest for you.
When you spoke about values, that got me in terms of the fact that the values, you were talking about the secret sauce.
Yes.
What is the secret sauce?
Now you ask.
The secret sauce, as I shared before, would have been an earnest attempt by parents to do deliberate actions for the developmental process of their child. Therefore, they are the key. They are the key. There is a pattern these days to push that responsibility off
On the school?
to a lot of different avenues. The school could be one, the church,
the community.
the community, and not taking the responsibility, their God-given responsibility, to really be the framework for success.
The architect.
They are the architect. They please understand that at the end of the day, when you look at a child, they mimic their parents. I know we don't want to admit that.
Yes,
but-
it is so true.
But you now invite a question. Those parents, and let me give it a foundation.
Okay.
Maybe a few weeks ago, when we did International Women's Day, and I'm so sorry you weren't here to celebrate with us or for us to celebrate you. When we did International Women's Day, one or two callers said, well, you must be doing, Men's Day. Of course, me now, I say every other day is International Man Day because them run things. But it caused me to look at a scripture in Leviticus. I think it's 29 verse 19 or 19 verse 29. Which spoke to honoring your daughters. It was saying, if you allow your daughters to turn to prostitution, the whole nation goes to prostitution, and iniquity fills the land. And then it ended by saying, and the land will vomit the people out, just as the land has vomited out the people whom you are replacing in Canaan. So I came back and started a discussion on the consequences of women being dishonored in communities and being treated in such a way that they are left with an inability
marginalized.
to parent and to nurture families and to build communities and societies that are wholesome. And we looked at the pattern. A woman who is abused, a young girl who is abused, may become an early mother, teenage mother, unable to parent that child goes into a repeat of the. And so by the time you look at it from a higher point, the society is showing the ill effects of abusing a young girl.
Correct.
Because, the womb and the cradle are at the heart of what women represent. So now you have children coming into school in a school environment that seeks to fulfill the needs of the child.
Right.
But the child's needs either were shaped inadequately or were not shaped at all.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
There you go. Absolutely. And so, but now you're in a society that that would be expecting the parent, the home environment, to play a particular role in building and achieving success for that child. So I just want to know, how do you...
We're not trying to pass off responsibilities. The school has a major responsibility to educate the child. That's their main goal. They're also there to form and formulate ideas and growth for that child. So we're not passing that off to anyone.
I don't like the passing off phraseology, because you were so right when you said parents have a God-given role.
They have a God-given role.
And then the school as an institution
to support
supports
that.
what they
Correct.
right.
So we want to make sure that the school understands that we have a responsibility to provide as much environment and fertile soil
Yes.
for growth.
Right.
All right, but I want to come back to that. I don't want to
Yes.
not answer your question, but I want to come back to the verse that you did share. That institutionally, I believe that the family structure over time, whether it's a mother or father, if that child has the value systems or understand to respect the value of education, I firmly believe that that is enough soil for us as educators to use it
To plant
to
something
plant
good.
something good. You know what I'm saying? So we know you're going with the idea of the broken family and the disintegration of the unit itself, the nuclear family system, and that is a whole different conversation
That's
you know,
we're not going to get sidetracked. into that
correct,
today.
because that is huge. That's a big factor to the society itself and what we have. But as educators, when we have a public system, we welcome everyone.
True.
It's an open door. We turn away no one.
Correct.
But if we can just get enough to start with, and what we're asking
We
for,
want
something to work with.
I hear that.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Because even with the discussion whether it is single parent, both parent,
Correct.
but
Because you can have
if-
both parents and still don't value education.
That's what I was about to say. That's
Okay,
the point I'm making.
correct.
That if education is valued, whether it is a single parent, two parents, grandparent, it does sufficient to give that
Correct.
child the incentive to
Correct.
say,
And
"This
that's
is
the
so-"
secret sauce that
That's
I'm
the
talking
secret
about.
So-
Yes, go ahead.
So anecdotally,
Yes.
we are aware that many strategies and resources are put in place to close that gap where the parenting situation is not meeting expectations. Even in Jamaica, with like in the post-COVID era when students were unaccounted for, a strategy was deployed to go into communities and find the children, because parents weren't sending them forth and the children were not wandering in on their own. The
They're
lost
not going
sheep.
to do it.
So the good shepherd sent some seekers out. What are the kinds of strategies that you employ to help close that gap?
And we're trying still. So please understand that the first phase of the COVID shutdown, we had all of our boys and girls and teachers at home. So the first thing that we had to do would be to educate the staff how to work remotely. That was the biggest challenge as administrators we had to accomplish. Next, we did training with the parents, how to get the students online.
Okay.
So I held with several seminars, workshops online.
What was the turnout rate?
Sometimes very low. Sometimes I had 3. Sometimes I had 10.
But it kept growing.
And it kept growing.
Okay.
You just persist. You just have to be, persevere through it. But we also required our boys and girls to get on. Remember now, boys and girls were using the tool before.
In classrooms.
In the classrooms. So because they had access to that information already, the crossover was not as heavy a lift for us as a district, because the students were familiar with it. What we had issues, the issues
Inside the
were
classroom.
around logging in on time,
Don't tell me about
remaining
that.
online,
Not being distracted by the
not
games.
being exactly all right. And then the teachers themselves, what do we do for 6-7 hours
Online.
online? You remember that's a long time being seated, so those are the challenges, setting up a structure for that to occur. Once we got over that hill, then we went into the phase of now providing direct instruction to students. And then we also had to meet the individual needs of certain students. So remember, we have small groups, we have push-in, pull-out services that we have to provide. We have OT, we have speech services that we also have to provide.
OT?
Occupational therapy. Okay?
So that kids
So
who were
they were correct. So we
And all of those had to be translated
all those services
into an
had to be
online presence.
correct.
Ah.
All right. So we had to find ways and means to get that done. All right. Some were successful, some were not as successful.
At least you had that trust to get it done.
We had to figure it out. Remember,
Well, I would love to borrow from you the successful ones. so
Yeah.
we could work it into the program that we are doing.
Because here in Jamaica, what happened? It was find every children at the yard, something like that.
and,
So,
and my
The name
my
of the-
my
to
log
find the
on
sheep.
rate my log on rate was about 65. Please understand that. At
That's
my
very
husband's no, at my husband's location, they were close to like 90 something.
but that's high school.
No, that's elementary. So depending on the
location.
area, your location, the value systems again that are in place, and how
So
the
now
parents
the
sees
demographics of the
correct.
community steps in.
Correct. All
Okay,
right.
So we had the similar thing because here
We
in
had lower
Jamaica-
than 65, please.
we're not about 65 like a teacher. come and
65 would
say,
have been cause for celebration.
Yes, like somebody would say, teachers are frustrated. A class of 30, 2 kids show up.
Correct. And we did several things. Please understand that we gave out hotspots to parents. We provided. I mean, we went knocked on doors into the community to find them, and I physically would take laptops to their school, to their homes,
their
and
homes
say,
to
"Here
make
you
sure."
are. Use it."
Oh, okay.
You know.
But there is another thing because even my son, because online,
All right, stop whispering.
my
thank you
son
here.
online to be monitoring, parent is gone out to work.
Correct.
So that was a major thing.
And that's the value system
Yeah.
I'm coming back to.
Yeah.
Because you have to put that in place as to the importance of what you're doing and the value that it has for your future. Because what happened, remember, the parent would be in the secondary room trying to get their work done in COVID time, and the students will be on the other line trying to get their work done. Now, remember, that parent still has to go from 8 o'clock to 4 working. That child is sitting on a soft seat or on their bed or on a hard seat
Then
for
they're
several
about to-
hours.
Get up out of your bed.
Right. But remember, Teams has a piece to it. So the students' expectation would be to dress appropriately,
Up
and
top.
they had to be ready for learning, and we gave them breaks throughout the day.
Right. That's what's important.
So our kindergartners and our first graders, because they're 5 and 6 year olds, all right, were we were
We're going to have
completed.
dance time now. Get up. Move. Move about.
No, we were serious. They had math, they had reading, they met all the requirements, but we were finished with school by 12:30, 1 o'clock for them,
Okay, all
because
right.
it was just too long a session
It's
for them.
too long.
Yes.
Attention span, that kind of thing.
Correct. And so for that first year, now remember, we did not provide any testing for that first year. The second year of COVID, teachers were required to come back to work, because remember, I live in the state of Florida. So they were required to come back to work over the period of time. We had different transitional phases. And so by December of that second year, we now had maybe 50% of our students returning to school.
Okay.
So we did exactly what you guys did. We did a rotational
Phase.
thing, not, where, not,
There's one thing coming today.
no, actually, like, excuse me, not rotational, but we had the 6 feet distance in, and we
Okay,
try to
okay,
put that in
okay.
place. But students were required to come into school every day,
Okay.
those who wanted their students to come in. So you would find that the 50% still remained at home because they were very afraid of COVID. And we also had approximately 50% that came in, mostly our primary kids, which were the kindergartners and our first graders. They just, they were nearly 100% at that level.
Because they need it.
They needed it,
Oh,
correct. And we were very happy to have them back. So there were different phases to the transition, but I truly believe that closing that gap has still not yet occurred. We're still working on it.
Impact. Long term.
It's a long-term impact. And
What do you
So-
see? Look in your crystal
I,
ball.
I have students who are 2 to 3 years behind.
Oh.
Yes, I'm just going to be honest.
Which
And
is
with
kind of 1 plus the actual 2 years of the pandemic.
Correct.
my
And if
God.
you think of our kindergartners, remember, if they got hit coming in that first year, they were impacted from the March,
Foundation
and the foundations are all gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're now sitting in 3rd grade right now. Would it be 3rd grade? Yeah, I think it's 3rd grade.
Looking puzzled.
Puzzled.
But let me ask you this, because I'm going to share something else from this report and just to
Sure.
cue you in. But how do you see technology playing a part, digital literacy playing a part in accelerating the pace, the adjustment pace for these for these children? Does it hold some potential?
It does hold some potential, but I know there's a big debate raging right now versus whether do we need to physically have teachers in the classroom versus them just learning on their own and doing what are called virtual learning. I personally am a strong proponent for teachers in the classroom. Nothing beats the human connection.
Because we're humans.
Nothing beats that relationship building whereby the student is supported and encouraged through a growth mindset to do more and to not give up and to persevere. A computer cannot do that, and so yes, if you are a talented student, you can accelerate your learning because you have gotten the skills to be able
What if you don't
to.
have the skills?
Then I think at that time, for me personally, I believe it needs to be a one-on-one, face-to-face.
So earlier we were talking a bit about artificial intelligence and some transhumanism
Yes.
and the extent to which you can use various sensory techniques to accelerate the implanting of information so that it sticks faster than when you are using the more organic route.
Can you share me like data or share with me what were the results? Yes, I'm not familiar with.
No, we were talking philosophically.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
We weren't having any data or anything like that, So
No, and I wouldn't want to overcomplicate the discussion with this at the moment.
Okay.
It's just understanding the extent to which man's manipulation of technology and greater understanding
enhance.
of biology and the chemistry of the human body can enhance the learning experience. So, for example, there are some things which if you taste it, touch it, and feel it, it is more memorable for you than if you read about it.
Correct.
That's just anecdotally, let's use that as the first level of understanding. So we're not there yet where virtual reality replaces the classroom.
Okay.
And you can have a multidimensional sensory experience so that learning something is a whole different
So, educators will let you know that there are different modalities to learning. And
welcome to the conversation.
and it's not a one size fit all.
Correct.
But the visual impact that is, I believe at this place where we are right now, it is crucial for teachers to be versed in technology to provide the crossover into that world whereby students can delve and learn more about it and even bring things back to the classroom that the teacher may not be aware of. Right now, for my staff, we're working to be a Microsoft school.
Okay.
And I am having 100% of my teachers, including myself,
Certified.
be certified. And so,
is that in collaboration with Microsoft?
correct. Yes. And so that's my initiative as a school we're an incubator school at this time, and we're going through that process to be a Microsoft certified school. With that being said, we are learning more about what technology can provide for students in the classroom. However, the modalities in which one child will learn from will be very tactile in one sense, and in another student, it can be visual and it can be auditory. So because of all the different learning styles, the teacher needs to come readily available to provide those pieces to the student. And you cannot walk into a set. Every great teacher comes in understanding that within seconds they should be able to define what is your
What's
learning
the style for each, yes.
So do you actively test for that in your system, or because the teacher?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what I'm saying, so the teacher is equipped with the tools,
Yes.
but then do you do an administrative test to determine?
When
what
you say the test, you mean for each and individual,
learning set?
definitely.
Yeah, you do that because some.
So
In a
that's the
sense of
teacher's job.
It is the
It's
teacher's
teacher's job. That's
yeah,
just saying
it is a part of it.
a good teacher must be able to accomplish
Immediately.
that.
And it shouldn't
as
take
the-
2 weeks to figure that out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to place each child that's under your
That
care.
they go through it, and I'm saying, okay, Johnny's that thing. So in terms of my lesson plan.
Correct.
I've got to do that.
Correct.
So I'm incorporating all the different
So no
learning
child is
styles.
left behind. I want
You
to
know-
read something from.
Let me. Do you mind me just?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm a math teacher. When I walk into a teacher's classroom,
You're
it
a
takes
super
me
teacher.
it takes me less than 2 minutes to know whether or not if that teacher prepared the lesson. In less
In
than
any
2 minutes.
subject or in math?
Math.
Yeah.
Period.
Yes.
I can walk in and I can tell whether or not if you are meeting the needs of the students. The reading and the ELA and other areas, yes, I am still versed, but not as quick.
With the math.
But the math, I can tell whether or not if you took your time to prepare. So, a talented teacher understands the needs of their student within a few minutes of working with them one on one, and then begin to prescribe, and then work out a plan of action
to bring that
child
to
into
the right place.
correct.
Do they use teaching assistants in the classroom?
It depends. So we do offer teacher assistance in classrooms that need it. Usually those rooms are or ESC special needs
Special needs. Okay.
and if the funding is there, which is it's hardly ever there, but sometimes if it's within the scope of the school and they have the extra fund, then we can hire a few more.
So would a parent be? Is it possible for a parent to provide an assistant for a child in a? It has to be the state that meets that need. Okay.
Correct. District.
Yeah, the district.
So,
sorry.
so
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I couldn't send my child with his 2 caregivers.
No.
They would have to sit outside this classroom.
There are some. I don't want to get into it, but there are some.
exemptions.
Yes, there were a few depending on the challenges that the student provides to the
Yeah.
classroom, the disruptions. They have RBAs that they can behavior techs that are provided, and they can be private or public.
RBA,
Okay.
is that what?
They are just behavior people who are there to.
Rehabilitative behavior.
Registered
agent.
behavioral assistants.
Okay, you
I
said
can
it.
make up a meaning for
Yes.
it.
That's what it is.
No, it's
not
it's
registered.
missing my thoughts at this moment, but it's pretty much therapists who are coming in, who are in the classroom to assist with the behavioral pieces of that student.
Okay.
Because the behaviors are preventing the student from their education
Okay.
Yeah.
learning practices.
All right, we're
break.
up on a break. I'll read the section to you in the break, so
Okay.
we can be ready for it when we
No
return.
problem.
Please stay with us. We'll be right back with our guest, Dr. Michelle. I'm
I've-
kidding, Michelle Allison.
I've
Welcome back. I tell you, I'm starting to think that the chatter during the break is more exciting than what happened.
we spoke about management in the break. We spoke about management in
I
the
missed
break.
some of it.
Yes,
but I
and somebody said, I know what you're talking about. Management.
He's not.
Oh dear. I'm feeling like, did I get talked about while I was away?
No, you didn't know. We're
Oh.
talking about Mr. Allison.
Oh, okay.
That's Michelle's
Um,
husband.
all right, I didn't get to read it to you. Everybody will hear it. The Jamaica education system faces 2 major challenges. The need to train students to function in a technologically based economy, and the need to help solve its catastrophic problem of crime, including unusual levels of violence toward females. You were going to make mention of that scripture. That's your cue. Children and persons with non-traditional sexual and gender orientations. Hence, the curriculum requires as much attention to social and emotional learning as to the STEM subjects, so as to engender respect for human life and a sense of responsibility and civility in human relations. The part I want to focus
Technology.
on is oddly, I want to talk about the emotional learning.
Okay.
Social and emotional learning.
I think COVID has brought to light the need for us to have that human connection, and the isolation period has given us full insight to how relevant it is to have that connection. And because that was somewhat taken away from us, we are now in a period where we see the after effects of it. And there are a lot of repercussions that have occurred. Now, again, I have to share with you that I'm at the primary or the elementary level. I believe that a lot more are shown visually or physically at the upper grade levels.
Yeah.
And not to say that the younger students are not grappling with it or not wrestling with it. But what we do know is that what I saw for myself, boys and girls who were desperate to come back to school, desperate. They were coming through those doors and hugging, and just
Yes.
Look,
they missed coming to school, missed their friends, missed playing with them, socializing with them. And because of that, there was a need for us as educators to really put into place what I call social and emotional learning curriculum in the classrooms. So with that being said, on the district level, we were mandated to provide that to our students.
There was a very interesting sound bite from a little Jamaican female student. She said she would come out early when school resumed. She would arrive early and just stand and watch the children coming in, because it was just, I found it just, it captured my imagination that a child, she looked like she may have been about 10 or maybe about 10.
it was healing for
And
her.
she said it was
emotion.
just so satisfying to see the children streaming in. That was what she wanted to see, to know that that part of her life had resumed. So I get it. I get it.
And they were crying.
Yeah.
They were, wanted to come back in. The only group that probably did not know what school looked like or felt like would be our kindergartners.
Yes, who hadn't got any
Who
at
had not
all.
gotten any experience.
I know.
So the challenge to bring them back in the fold midstream was difficult. But for those who were already a part of the system, you could see even our behavior students, what we would consider to be behavior students, fell in line. No issue, because they didn't want to go home.
Happy to be back.
Happy to be
Yeah.
back.
We had a guidance counselor from one of our listeners who
He's
works
probably
in,
listening now in the inner city.
in which case we say good morning. I think it is the Edward Seaga Primary School. That's the new name of the school.
Oh, it's not the Denham Town anymore.
It was renamed, I think.
Edward.
But he mentioned that one of the challenges he saw, children playing, and the
Language.
tolerance and the patience had disappeared somewhat, and usually they would see the teacher and not resort to profanity, but that boundary had disappeared during the
Yes.
time out of school.
Yes.
And so I guess everyone must be looking at strategies to rebuild those boundaries as quickly as possible.
Especially in the middle and high school. Again, it's not in my area, but working with my coworkers, that's an issue. There's an uptick with fighting. There, just how to socially respond to others. Those boundaries have not been defined over a couple of years and have been eliminated. And so we have to reestablish some. We all like boundaries, believe it or not. We don't
Well,
think
that's
we
how
do.
you enjoy freedom.
Correct.
Who said it? I think it was your husband who said it.
Correct. And because of that, they're walking back into a system that is restrictive, and they have not been in that system
Conditioned that way.
conditioned for some time, and now you're seeing the pushback, and so it's trying to get that melting pot to work, and depending on what area you're coming from.
I just had an insight that there's an expression that many of us use. I love to use it myself, but it is actually quite racially charged. You say they went native.
in some cases.
Yes.
They went native?
Native.
Yes.
That's
Or-
that's an expression, but it is racially charged.
Correct.
To return to a state of nature assumes that a state of nature is backward, prehistoric, uncivilized. They hear, like I always say, that if you leave men alone for a long time, they go native. They don't shave. They don't bother to,
I
Oh, shut up, man.
I am staying numb on that one. I am sure we'll get an uptick with calls on that one.
We didn't go
But
native.
back
They
to
don't cut
to
their
just
nails.
being in the classroom, that I share with you that the challenges are there,
Yeah.
just to provide that structure to the students. And
Structure is so important.
correct,
in
but
their
I
life.
think a lot of us are not realizing that a lot of our students had losses, family loss.
Yes,
And we're missing that piece. There's a
Yeah.
lot of grieving that occurred within families.
or that didn't get done.
Exactly. And the support systems were not there for those family members and to say the goodbyes. Remember, they lost grandparents, they lost fathers. I had in my own setting where we had kids, we lost students, and we also lost parents. So, we've not dealt with that.
You're right about
You know,
that.
and so
Tip of the iceberg.
you're looking at bringing in a group of individuals where the family structure in many cases have been dismantled, for some, and so they're now living with a cousin or an auntie because the mom is gone or the dad is lost.
Yeah.
Or the grandma
That's
who
very-
was
it's a
part
very-
of the extended family.
that's a very
looked after
sobering
them.
thought.
So the SCL is really around how do you support those students.
So it's way more critical
way
now than
more
ever before.
critical.
So I'm going to share with you a conclusion out of our own
Sure.
study again.
Okay.
Emotionally unstable, disrespectful, educationally disengaged children cannot learn STEAM. Well, STEAM, science, technology.
Could you repeat that again?
Emotionally unstable, disrespectful, educationally disengaged children cannot learn. Let's just stop at learn. This is a conclusion they came to. Say, however, the good news from a wealth of educational research is that the teaching and learning of STEAM education and again back to social
So
emotional-
STEAM
No,
STEAM
no,
is
STEAM
science,
is
technology, engineering, art, and math versus STEM, which eliminates
left
the
out
arts. So when we
Yes.
use the acronyms, I just want to make sure everyone.
It's the same.
It's clear. That's why
Thank
I,
you.
I have
It's
to keep
the
reminding
same.
her. You need to define. You need to
No, but I
define.
have Michelle and she's done it beautifully.
No,
I don't
It's about Michelle.
I don't try to do all of it myself. So
Michelle is dying with
so,
laughter.
so this is the conclusion that children who are emotionally disabled, if we could call it that way, cannot learn. That's what they've said.
I think
Cannot
that's a
learn.
broad stroke. I
Go into it.
Because in resiliency, even
think the key word is disengaged.
yeah,
Yes.
I think the key word is disengaged. So, but to just put a paintbrush and just to paint it, flat out is a disservice to our students who are struggling, because through the arts, through the STEM, technology, you can re-engage those students and bring them to a point whereby
But I
can.
think the point they're making is that you have to re-engage them in order for them to learn.
Correct.
Correct.
Said-
The key
Which
is
is
the
why they've said here that the social and emotional learning is a critical component to get the students into learning the substantive disciplines.
Let me ask you a question, and I'm going to throw this back at you. What is considered social and emotional learning?
In Jamaica,
Yes.
well, we started with the definition of the difficulties in the Jamaican environment, the evidence of violence towards women, children, and a level of dysfunction in the society, which has an impact on the minds of the young. And here, remember, I'm reading from the report.
I got
so-
it. Because
right.
in my mind, I want to
Because
make sure
I'm
that we're
trying
on
to
the same
tease out
page.
Out of your
Yes.
experience.
Yeah, because social emotional learning defined at the primary or elementary level is providing support systems for students to be emotionally adequate, to be emotionally
able to
what's the word I'm looking for? But engage.
relate to persons, round
relatable,
about.
right?
Yeah, relatedness,
And how to
mindfulness, what that means.
how to relate
But I don't
to
think
another.
it differs here.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it differs
Okay, so
here.
we put in practices and curriculum to support that, which is great appropriate. So, for instance, let's say you have a fifth grader. The conversation will be what do we do for tolerance, and so we can now provide miniature lessons or mini lessons on that area of tolerance, and we describe it. We do
What
role
does it mean?
models, we do acting, we act it out, we do video, we do different things on it, while in the kindergarten level.
Can't do that.
We may do such thing as working with a friend. How do you line up in the line?
Waiting your turn.
Waiting your turn.
Yeah.
And no, bringing those pieces back in there and not taking them for granted. So the question about whether or not if a child is emotionally not ready or disturbed or what's defined by that article, the key would be the disengagement piece and the teacher's role in using strategies to
Re-engage.
re-engage the child.
Well, then they mention a number of things: emotionally unstable, disrespectful, educationally disengaged. But from what you're saying, an emotionally unstable, disrespectful child can still learn STEAM
Correct.
They can. They can.
Correct.
as long as they're engaged.
I just want to introduce something that you brought up, the whole impact of trauma on our young people,
Right.
on our children in terms of how they learn and so on. And you have said a lot of them are still grieving.
They're still going through their grief. They're
and-
watching it on TV.
Yes,
And if they don't have a relative that it's nearby, they're still seeing.
somebody who they know
Correct.
or some friend.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're still experiencing the change that occurred to their lives, wearing a mask, having to isolate, walking 6 feet apart from their friends and their family members, not being able to see grandma, not being able to see granddad, not being able to go to the supermarket, the manner in which they had to before, not being able to go to the movie theater. All their lives have been changed upside down, and we ourselves as adults had to make that adjustment. What about those students, and how we can't take it for granted that it's just okay.
Right.
They're going through the phases and changes of learning to do the adapt. They're adapting to what they have right now.
And some people have alluded to the fact that the impact of this pandemic, we truly have not begun to see the impact on children. And when you said what you said, they saw me go back.
Yeah.
Because I know
True
for a
son,
fact,
Michelle.
having to work with a lot of these children, young people, it really has impacted them. They've not fully begun to express what it has done to them as individuals. So the whole thing of the trauma of the pandemic on them has we can't even begin to measure it.
Correct. Again, that will need a psychologist, and,
Yeah, and
and count, those who are trained in that area to provide us with that kind of assistance. But as educators, we teach them to cope. We give them strategies and the SEL are coping mechanisms that we provide for our students.
Okay.
So, but I just want to, when I walk into a setting, I don't look at a student and say because he's traumatized, because he, all the different variations that he
He's
can't learn.
disrespectful and
Correct. We have to find different avenues in which to engage that student.
Because they're resilient.
And find some way in me. There must be something that we can get to provide access to get in.
but that would be a part of the SEL. The
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
No,
you mean
because
some other strategy that
remember, teachers have a curriculum to teach. They have
you
only
gotta
That's
get
the
it
first
done.
thing.
they have 6 hours within
You
a
gotta
day.
get it done.
They have
All
to
right.
get it done.
I've asked the engineer in the studio to play a song for you.
Sure.
You won't hear it.
Okay.
Because unless we make some other arrangement here. But I've asked him to play Taurus Riley's She's Royal.
That's in tribute to Michelle.
In tribute to Michelle.
Allison. Okay.
So, but yes, perhaps I should get that done before I ask you the next question, because one of the reasons I've chosen the song for you, aside from the fact that you're an African queen, is because teachers everywhere do yeoman service and never get enough of a reward. And some of the things we've talked about here has highlighted the fact that whether you're in America, which is a more comfortable, economically a more comfortable environment than in Jamaica, you go beyond the call of duty to get the job done, and you're parenting while being teacher and the many hats that you wear. So that is the Morning Connections tribute to you.
Thank you.
But I do want to hear when we come back how teachers feel about their emoluments and the conditions of work, and is it any different for you than it is for our Jamaican teachers. So She's Royal is warming up in studio, and we'll take a short. All right. Thank you very much for staying with us and welcome back to the Morning Connection. Percival and I have been talking to Michelle Allison. She is a daughter of the soil, Jamaican woman living and working in Florida. She's a principal of an elementary school there, and we've been pulling from her the learning, the skills, the experience that she has garnered working in the United States of America. She's only like 90 minutes away, but can I tell you, I paid a tribute to her with Taurus Riley's song, which is over 10 years old at the very least, and it was the first time she was hearing it.
I'm so sorry.
So I don't know what's going on in Florida, but we've got to send a reggae mission up there to Broward County.
Well, you're good enough.
Why?
You
A reggae
said
mission.
a reggae mission. Me, I
This
tell you,
sounds like
Baba.
something, right?
Well, just for clarification,
Yes.
as he had shared before about management, okay,
Yes.
that my husband is very firm, and therefore
He's in
but
charge of
He's
music.
in charge of music,
I'm
Poor
and
Miss
it's
Alice.
mostly Christian and gospel music that is being played in my house.
So we have to get some of the, what's his name? Barneswell, Downswell?
Kevin Downs.
Kevin
well, I don't-
Downswell.
Yeah, real Jamaican
Pastor has
flavor.
introduced me to some
Okay.
serious- No bounty killer.
or we could introduce our husband to Burris Hammond and Popcorn.
Oh yes, that's
song,
true.
yes, that song which is
Yeah, he's familiar with those. He's
You're
saying to us
familiar with
from-
those
So as my
All right.
support system, he ensures that I'm well covered.
he covers you well because
Well-
it's what we call good management, right, bossy? Yes, sir.
All right. Well, management has spoken. I have to beg management's forgiveness for then introducing you to some radical new lyrics.
I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I appreciate the tribute.
Yes, thank you. It was given with love and
Definitely.
and
And it was well
respectful-
received.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
My heart is warmed. So I wanted to turn your attention a little bit to just sharing with us what the concern about working conditions and payment emoluments. How are the teachers in your district or the workers in your school district? Our teachers are always under pressure, doing more than.
I think there is a misunderstanding as to how much work is put in to educate a child. When a teacher walks into a classroom, it looks easy, but there are hours and
Of
hours
preparation.
and hours of preparation that has been done prior to that child walking through that classroom. Actually,
And
it's hours
after.
on a daily basis. And so there is a misunderstanding that all she or he does is just open the book, read from it, and the child will learn, and your day's done by 1:30, 2 o'clock, and you're home for the rest of the day doing absolutely nothing else.
Who sets the pay scales? Is it the board?
It is
That's
the board.
the elected board.
Correct.
Are professional teachers eligible for election to the board? Anyone can go on.
No, it doesn't work that way. So remember, the school board is an elected position. So you would have to vie for it. And
All right. So let me rephrase that. Could I, as a retired teacher,
Yes.
put myself up?
That is correct.
So the board can be populated with persons who have actual knowledge and
Correct.
experience
And it
of
does.
what goes on in the classroom.
And it has, at this current time, past teachers on there.
And still you say there is a misunderstanding about the level of effort that goes
So
into...
when I say misunderstanding, I'm going to say probably from parents,
Yep.
from the community itself, not from the board. So I think the board really understands the amount of work and effort that is put into a classroom. And remember, there is a support system, the operational pieces that that have to be in place, getting the school ready. There are many aspects to getting a child into that classroom setting. But let's focus on just the instructional part of it, which will be the teacher.
Yes, because I am curious about payment and working
Right.
conditions for teachers.
So the payment structure is developed by the board and the BTU, okay,
That's a
which
union.
is the union group for Broward, okay. They're the ones that negotiate over a period of time, and that is placed and that's put into place. I can frankly say that the teachers are not happy with that pay structure because of the amount of work and time that is they're put into the classroom, and they're not necessarily paid at the highest rate compared to, let's say, someone from New York. All right,
What you're saying, so even within uh, a district or even in a state, you might have some teachers in one school district being paid more.
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
Definitely. So Miami-Dade will be different from Broward. That will be different from Palm Beach. That will be different from Osceola counties. They're all different ranges of pay.
Are you serious?
Yes. They're all different.
Even though it's the same curriculum that they're basically.
They're not the same. Every district provides sets their own
So what
curriculum.
about the common? Obama had introduced the common. What is it? Common curriculum? What's it? Something like that.
So you're talking Common Core?
Yes, and it
That's
created a
very
lot.
complicated. No, it really wasn't created by Barack. It was created by the Republican governors. That was initiated, but through a coalition of governors initially, and then he took upon the pieces from it and created what was now known as the Common Core. But the initial parts of it were pulled from other.
So it's a bipartisan effort.
It was, but it's not shared that way. It's not
the credit
related.
is
So
not-
I'm not going
yeah.
down that political
Yeah,
path.
I just asked him
If
because-
one were to do the real study on it, it was actually initiated by governors who felt the curriculum was not strong enough.
Okay.
And met the needs of the students. So therefore Common Core is in place at our level. But remember, our state changed the Common Core to what's called FSA. So Florida State Assessments. Okay, so it's FSA for us in Florida.
So was
Okay,
that a change in name or a change in character?
a great
also?
question. I think I will say a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
If
Okay.
you were to compare the Common Core standards compared to what the FSA standards, there are very little changes.
Okay.
So I would say this could have been more of a political statement than if anything.
a rebranding.
Correct.
for
But there are
impact.
modifications that in there that one will say it's not the same because things were definitely modified in there. But a lot of the core pieces remained.
So the
Okay.
core, it is what it is. Core.
All right, all right. So therefore, what you're saying, within a state, you have different pay scales based on what
The district
that-
sets the pay scales.
Oh wow.
Right. So my question for you, you've identified that teachers are not all happy with where it is set.
They're underpaid.
They're
Let's just put it
underpaid.
that way.
Well, that
They would
seems to
say,
be a
but all of them-
universal.
that's a universal thing
that
around the
seems to be
world,
a universal
except
thing
in
for
some
teachers and
countries.
nurses.
Except in some countries where they have focused on it and they've said, we want our best teachers at the
Right.
elementary.
Correct.
so on.
If you think about it, we're the ones that are educating your child. We are the foundation to what is going to happen to the future. Why not put the money where the difference can happen for future?
for the greatest
For the
impact.
greatest impact. And therefore a teacher, as I would always tell my hubby, is God's little secret.
So you're a secret to your husband?
God's secret.
Okay, God's secret.
God's little secret. Teachers, God's secret, because it provides an avenue in which you can influence,
The
you can
future.
touch, you can inspire,
You can change.
you can change.
Okay. All right. So
On the
it's across the board.
emolument question,
Yes.
I want to be
Sure.
I want to be educated on this aspect of it. For Jamaica, it's always a question of priority. What is the immediate need that has to be met, and it is prioritizing resources against a lack of adequate resources. What would you say accounts for this disconnect between value and payment?
I frankly don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. We come to the table each year. We could wrestle with all of the pieces, and still we walk away with not much.
Okay.
And it's not a question of resources. It's
not
not
a
that the
question.
state doesn't have the funds or
Sometimes we get into our own way, and we get things too complicated. And I feel that if an earnest attempt was done to listen to what the teachers are saying at the ground level as to how to make change, a lot more could be done.
Make change
How
in terms
marked-
of remuneration or change in terms of general system.
I think I think parents are frustrated that they're not seeing the level of growth that they would like to see out of their child.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some frustration on the parents, and that they want to see their child be the best. They're not seeing that piece.
Okay.
The teachers on the other end are saying, we are stressed, we are overworked,
Yeah.
we're underpaid,
Right.
and the two are not really coming together to really. They're trying. There are resources there for them to come together, but what policies
Mm-hmm.
are there to really make that
Happen.
make it happen? So the question about how to make the greatest impact
Mm-hmm.
in a classroom
Mm-hmm.
comes is the teacher.
Okay.
The teacher will make
Leadership.
it's the greatest impact. That person is right in that classroom to make the greatest change. You have to feed that.
Okay.
You have to nurture that.
Right.
You have to value that.
Okay.
All right. Once the teacher feels valued, feels
feels happy.
supported, happy, they would probably go more above and beyond even what they're doing at this time.
Okay.
But when you look at your paycheck and you still can't even pay your rent or your mortgage or buy a car, you
Do you
get.
have the same issues there as here? Okay. All
I
right.
have teachers who are
that's-
making.
Yeah, so now I've identified that it's not scarcity of resources,
In
which
some
is
cases.
often the case in Jamaica. We just can't,
The will to do what is right.
But it sounds to me that there may also be a disconnect between the teacher's estimation of value and the parents' appreciation of value.
Correct.
So,
And again, I am sitting from only one angle, so please understand that there are many different viewpoints to this topic. But in my just seeing, with my group of teachers, we have teachers who just love to teach. It didn't if they get a dollar or not,
they
Still-
show
they're
up.
there.
They show.
Okay.
They still
They show up. But there are also teachers who really need that paycheck to pay their bills, to support their own families. So how do we keep the retention rate of those teachers?
And
Empower
these are
them.
good teachers.
These are good
who want
teachers.
us to remain in the system.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have to provide them with adequate payment so that they can feel that they can remain in this job. Because the top talented ones sometimes leave us and go off into the private sector because they can find better pay
In private schools.
or in private schools or
private-
private sector.
right,
Period. Just
yeah.
finding another job
doing
elsewhere.
Other things.
So
let me ask you
Yes.
now. How marked is the difference between what teachers would like to get and what they're actually getting?
I don't-
I don't know what it is in
That's
Jamaica,
a great
by the
question.
way.
I don't know
But-
either. I think that they want is a basic minimum wage that if they go home, they don't have to worry about their
Livable
What
basic.
wage.
we're calling the livable wage.
The
A
livable
livable
wage.
wage. Yeah,
Livable
okay.
wage. A livable wage. And I could be wrong, but that could be anything over 50,000
US per
US
year, per annum.
in the state of Florida.
So okay. So can you just tell us what are some of the pay skills that you know for somebody who goes to teachers college, who goes to university and is trained as a teacher, coming out at entry level,
It's mid 40s.
40,000,
Mid 40s, 45, 47,000. I think
Okay.
it's somewhere in that range.
and what and in
Depending
your,
if you have a master's versus a doctorate versus a bachelor's. So you have a minimum expectation to walk in with a bachelor's.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there, the highest is principals. No,
So I'm an administrator.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering, because I know here, because we have 100 and, I think in the high schools, more primary schools, which is where you are be at. So you're saying, so you begin at 45, depending on whether you have a bachelor's, a master's, or a doctorate.
Right.
What would be, in your own estimation, this is just your
The high end
opinion.
of a teacher?
Yes,
I
to
have my
start entry level.
No, the highest you can walk in is that. That's it.
No, but I'm saying, you said they're still underpaid even there. So what would you expect for somebody who's going to be teaching to get when they begin teaching?
I think in any setting,
Mm-hmm.
you are always going to have differences as to what a starting salary will be.
Right.
So we need to come to a conversation with our livable wages.
Okay.
Okay. What is deemed livable wages for a husband and wife and 2 kids?
Right.
Okay. A starting salary for most would probably be in the 50s.
Okay.
I would assume. I'm assuming now. Okay. So if that is the case, then that would mean that they are looking for anywhere between a $5,000 to $10,000 increase on their rate.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I want to share with you some of the feedback that you're getting online.
Sure.
Well, I think I shared with you before what Earl Brown said about the court sending black youths to the church and those kids leaving as university graduates, which was a counterpoint to how religion is treated in schools. But he went on to say that his church had a school from kindergarten to high school. Parents from Papua New Guinea send their unruly youths to the school run by his church, and a couple of those youths ended up being aircraft pilot, which is exactly to your point, that even the
Values.
disrespectful, unsociable ones can still
Yes.
be brought in stream.
Yes.
And then Taki says, and this is Taki Lemkwa, I got the name right. He approved a point that was being made where the nurturing and upbringing of girls are concerned. And I know you want to get back to that. Eventually, the ethics come from the mother, and it affects the nature of the circumstances, mother being first source.
Okay.
So I know I want you to table that. But he then went on to say that it's great listening to your guest. He too was in a school system as an assistant teacher, substitute teacher, prior to the COVID crisis and up to the lockdowns, and he agrees with you on the points that you have made. Well, he also added that one has to make sure to incorporate a side job or jobs to make it so.
That's
in
a
other
reality
words,
in terms
It is a
many
reality.
of the teachers
Yes.
are moonlighting.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Is that something you encourage? Does the school
I
have any
do.
input in it at
I
all?
do. So where I am, my setting is considered to be a Title I school. So a Title I school means I have a high number of free and reduced rate students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So students do purchase lunch at school, and based on that percentage, if you're over 50% of your students, you're entitled to what's called a Title I grant.
Okay.
All right, under the federal program.
Okay.
So with that, I get additional resources to support those students within the classroom setting, provide additional teachers in the classroom, and at the same time, the students get either free lunch,
Free or subsidized
right?
lunch.
But I also offer camps. So I provide after-school camps, I provide weekend camps, and teachers are able to pick up
some
additional
extra
funding
money.
from there. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
Yeah.
Innovation.
yes, yes.
So what were your thoughts on that Leviticus scripture? It seemed something caught fire in your mind.
No, I don't want to sound too. I mean,
Levitical.
correct. I believe the
Testament.
structure of the men. I believe the males have
A role to play.
a major role to play in the structure of the community. And when that role gets moved and it's shifted, and the women are now placed in a position where now they're now taking up that role and have to do some of the leadership that is the divine will of the males to begin with. I'm not saying that women are not appropriately adequate to do it. What I'm saying is that I do believe that it requires
Partnership.
Proper balance.
a proper balancing of the roles. And when the men are in that specific task or are able to do, then the women will pick up something else. I'm not saying that we should.
You're talking about STDs.
What?
The women will pick up because we were talking about women being turned into prostitution.
So
And leading to the decay of
So the
society.
decaying is just,
A result.
as a result of when we have the nuclear system dismantled, and when we have to pick up the mantle and do things. And I'm not saying we're to be blamed. That's not what I'm sharing here, but their role, their structures that we have, and I think we have responsibilities that we do have. So again, the value systems can
In the
be
home
in the
environment.
home environment, whether single, whether it's married, whether it's in the grandparents or an aunt or an uncle, whoever it is that establishes that leadership role and outlines the responsibilities to the others within that setting and how they respond to it is crucial to making sure that that child has the best foundation to move forward. It's not guaranteed because you know of many settings of having the same mother and father and seeing boys and girls look quite different. You know what I'm saying? You know, you can have 5 or 6 within that household, same mom, same father, and they're all they're
All
you
over the place.
all over the place. So again,
And I
Well, I want to pick up on something you said because you mentioned the nuclear family.
yes,
And it immediately sort of triggered, another thought that the nuclear family is defined in a particular way. But then you went on to talk about the role of the extended family,
Correct.
the network of aunts and
Correct.
grandparents and so on.
Correct.
Which is very much in
Correct.
keeping, borrowing from another culture.
Right.
It
The
takes a village
takes
to
a village.
raise a
Correct.
child.
That is correct.
And many times the absence of the village is even more painful.
correct.
A
So some of
nuclear
the
family can be
socioeconomic,
disrupted by natural causes
Right.
that have nothing to do with.
The social and learning aspects, you can have that grandmom or the granddad who comes in the setting and support the child who may have had a bad day. It doesn't have to be the mom or dad,
Yeah.
or someone in the
Precisely,
village or someone
yes.
in the neighbor and say, brush it off, tomorrow's a new day, tomorrow's a better day.
How much of that do you see the role of extended families having an impact in your environment?
Yes.
that's an interesting thing. I wanted
It's
to
a
hear
very
in terms
interesting
of
question.
when you spoke about your context.
Yeah,
and
so
yeah.
the demographics of my location lends itself to that. I see that outplaying in my Hispanic population.
That's what made me ask you.
Yes, and so that is crucial. You do see those pieces coming through.
Abuela.
Abuela.
And so you allow, but we have maybe grandmother, grandfather days, where the parents are allowed to come on campus, and so we can see, the other family members who are the supporting members within that household.
The vibrancy of the community.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
We're big on community
Yes.
involvement.
Yeah, so it
It's-
doesn't have to be mommy or daddy. It just has to be within the setting itself that if mommy and daddy are absent, the expectation is you're going to come in, you're not going to be on the street ramping, you're going to get your work done, get it all accomplished, leave it at the side table when mommy and daddy comes in later on tonight or grandma.
Yeah, so we
they
can
can glance
celebrate.
over it, we can celebrate, put a check mark, yes, even if you can't
Yes.
read it. You understood it was done. Did you check your book? Did you have your lunch set up for tomorrow morning? Is your uniform
Absolutely.
ready?
I mean, even in Jamaica, there are many of us who don't have the experience of parents sitting to
Correct.
supervise homework.
Correct.
But parents make sure a structure is there.
Exactly.
You have your lunch money.
That's
your
correct.
uniform is ready. Your books
Mhm.
are, and they generally know that you are
Correct.
on point, so you
Right.
feel like someone cares.
And that's all that
yeah.
really.
Yeah, that's
All right,
true.
we're almost at the end of the show. We've
Okay.
not taken any calls this morning because we've just monopolized Michelle.
I am so sorry.
That's
No, but
all right.
but you
We
have been a
indulged.
wealth of information.
We indulged ourselves this morning.
Okay.
Thursday is Indulgence Day for the TMC crew. We come here, we eat delicious food, courtesy of JD's
my
Urban
Lord.
Pub. We enjoy the outdoors, and typically we have a guest at the table, and we have extended conversations. And I'm grateful that you were able to participate in it with us this morning. I want us to wrap up with just a little conversation on conflict resolution within the school environment, and maybe if you
with
if-
staff or with parents or with students?
parents. That's what, with parents, with staff. We've had things like stabbings in our class, in our schools,
Yes, I recently I know there was a situation that
where student
occurred.
die over
Yes.
some guard ring conflict.
Yes.
We've had situations where the teacher peel back and smack the student, and the
Yes.
parent come and want to fight the teacher and so on. I very colorful, but I just what's your experience, and then we
So
can
we
say
have
our
safe schools
goodbyes.
that are, that's a term that we use, safe schools, and we have protocols, we have guidelines in which to follow for conflict conflicts
Resolution.
resolution. I don't know if it's always
Resolved.
resolved. But let's talk about safety first. It's more on the guidelines of protecting the staff, protecting the students while they're on your campus. So there's safety pieces that are in place, such as in the past we used to have an open door policy. Those things are now closed. The gates are now manned. The doors have what's called single points of entry, so therefore no one can get on once you get on the campus, there's only one office, one area that you can enter,
you have to transit.
that you have to transit. There is, I don't know if you've been watching the news, we're going to have wand.
Yes.
Metal detectors, wands being utilized at certain levels. So there is a direct effort on our part as the district to provide as much safety pieces. It's not perfect, but it's their intent to keep it as safe as possible.
Any gun incidents in your school?
No. At the
thank God.
elementary level, the answer is
Listen,
no.
there was a small child that brought a gun to school.
Right.
It was reported, and
Correct.
I don't think he was 10.
Correct. So, sometimes if the parent leaves the weapons
He's just bringing it
unattended,
for show and tell.
correct, unmanned,
Show and tell.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
I mean,
but I don't know if you're familiar with the incident that happened several years ago with the Stillman Douglas.
oh yes.
So because of those pieces, because of the tragedy that occurred and the trauma that has happened to family members, we've been working very diligent as a unit, as a district to try to keep our district as safe as possible. And many changes have occurred within our setting. So we have armed guards right now at each setting. So we are required to have an armed guard at our school site.
Okay.
And so that armed guard is one to oversee
Security
on
That's-
campus
Yeah.
The
with
police.
with monitors. Now, depending on your city, you may get additional support from the police. So
Okay.
each city will provide additional support,
Okay.
but we are provided with an armed guard and we're called monitors.
Yes.
Campus monitors.
Okay. I want to end on a very cheerful note. What is the thing that you have enjoyed most about being an educator and working in a foreign country? You still call it foreign country when you're
This
here?
is my home.
This
is
in
home.
your new home.
Yeah. What I enjoy
The thing
most,
you've enjoyed the most.
I've always said it's God's little secret,
Ah,
and it
You
is.
enjoy the fact that you're God's little secret.
I'm not God's secret. It's God's secret to inspire and touch lives.
Okay. All right.
And so to see women, men leave our system and become the best. My husband has had graduates who have gone to MIT, they've gone to Harvard, and seen them coming back and just saying thank you for
Inspiring me.
inspiring me to be the best. I mean, they're working at top jobs,
so it's very gratifying.
Oh, it's extremely gratifying.
I want to share with you what one of our listeners has said. I think he's been an educator. I think he's a professor of some sort.
Okay.
Taki says, for me, it was a great experience encountering the different schools from pre-kinder, elementary, high schools to the alternative secondary and high schools. So, I mean, that is one of the jobs that I think rates very highly in terms of satisfaction.
Yes, because I have an autism
Even if-
program at my school, so I oversee autism for my area. And it is just an amazing feeling to watch those boys and girls just develop into their own and begin to get
Come to
life
life.
skills, just life skills. It's just
All right. So this is where I say thank you to all those who joined us online, on air. Thank you very much for sharing with us. A part of the journey is learning from others and appreciating the diversity in our experiences. We're going to close the show with Strength of a Woman. 2 tribute songs. I think you've been a favorite on the show. We've had some real stellar females join us on this program, and I'm glad to see that my friend Michelle is one of them. Let's say hello to Stacy. I hope she listened to the last
Big up.
minute. Oh, let me hear that again.
big up.
Big up, real Jamaican yard style come back out.
Yeah, we big up Stacy.
Well-
Thank you back at the studio, Lloyd. Thank you for taking us through the paces. And here, Mr. Engineer and Producer, in his Best 100 FM shirt, my own protector and one-man army.
Yes.
And Pastor Percival, thank you so much. Over there, Eden
Management.
and Maestro. Next time we'll try and have a chat with Mr. Allison himself, who is an educator living abroad too, but he's a musician of no mean order. I'm hoping that I can at least hear something that he has produced. When he comes on this program, he will have to share
have
some
to show
music
it
with
with
us.
us, but-
Have a great weekend, everyone. This is the Morning Connection, signing off and going to have breakfast. Thank you to the Ligony Club, to Carmen's Corner and Carmen's Collection, and to JD's Urban Pub for hosting us this morning.